Kaya, welcome. I'm very excited to have you here today. My name is Dr. Jacqui Hendriks and I am thrilled to be the host for this morning's event, the 2023 Growing and Developing Healthy Relationships Symposium. On behalf of the RSE project team here at Curtin University and our advisory committee, and thanks to the funding that we received from the West Australian Health Department. We're super excited to have you all here today, and we're also joined by quite a number of online delegates as well, who are either joining us in the live stream feed or will be accessing the recording afterwards. So this is the sixth one of these events that we've hosted since we first began back in 2014. And so we get very excited by bringing all these fabulous people together, particularly with our theme this year of connection, community and collaboration. So we really encourage you to foster those networks and make those connections as best you can. Thank you so much for stepping out of your classrooms and your workplaces for the day to spend some time with us in what I know you feel is a very important area for young people, and we thank you for the work that you already do in this space and your passion and your commitment to it. I do need to start with a few housekeeping things. So you've all got an evaluation form in your programs, and for our online delegates we will have emailed you a little survey as well. We really appreciate you taking some time throughout the day to give us some feedback, and our various volunteers will be on hand at the end of the day to collect those evaluation forms from you. They may be a little sweet treat / a bribe to help you hand those back, so please keep them in mind. In your programs there is a QR code if you haven't already passed on your details in relation to parking. Curtin is very good when it comes to noting cars in the car park that shouldn't be there. We don't want anyone to get a ticket, so if you could please make sure that your car rego has been uploaded, that would be great. And there's also a code in there if you want to access the Wi-Fi. For our in-person delegates, you will notice out in the foyer area our toilets have been liberated from gender for the day. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. There's a little bit of signage on the door and that will actually explain what facilities are housed in each space. So we've got private cubicles in both sets of facilities and one set of urinals as well. So we encourage you to take charge of that. We do have a number of speakers in the morning session, and so that our online delegates have equal access to ask questions, we're going to be using the Slido platform. So again, there's another QR code in your program. If you want to scan that at some stage, you'll be able to type in some questions to ask any of our morning speakers, and then we will have a panel as well in the morning after morning tea. The other thing I need to let you know is all of the slides and recordings will be sent afterwards, so don't panic. You don't need to take copious notes today. We will pass it all on to you. And for our in-person delegates, I know many of you are a little unsure or can't remember what workshops you might have signed up to. All of that has been documented. It's out in the foyer. When you come through those sliding doors, on the notice board there is a list of all of the different workshops we have on offer, and people's names are listed under there. So if you can't recall, just check that out. But we've also got lots of volunteers wandering around with purple lanyards and black shirts, so they're very happy to help you out if you get a little bit lost. Okay, so normally in this section of proceedings, I would hand over and ask someone to make a welcome to country address. We did have one arranged, and I'm sorry to say that unfortunately they chose late last week to pull out. Feeling a little disheartened and upset around the referendum result and wanting to take a bit of pause from those sorts of activities. And we chose to respect that position, and also felt that it was unnecessary to go back to community and continue to try and find another welcome to country address. So I do apologise that we are unable to provide one today, but I'm sure most people in the room can appreciate why that is. So in lieu of a welcome to country, I just wish to make my own acknowledgement that we are here and meeting on lovely Whadjuk Noongar Budja. I'm incredibly lucky to have spent most of my life in this place. I was born in Larrikin country, which is up near Darwin, and I've also spent a lot of time near Naluma, which is in the Pilbara. And in my professional work, I've been very lucky to travel to many different parts of Australia and visit many Aboriginal lands. Very strong sense of community and connection, family, yarning, communication is very central to being an Aboriginal person, and there is much we can learn from the Aboriginal people, particularly when it comes to relationships and sexuality education. One of my favourite programs is the Muditch program, which is Sexual Health Quarters created, and that is designed particularly for Aboriginal community. But it is all about learning about your personal identity and having a yarn with your mob. And that's just really good sex ed at the end of the day. So there is much we can learn. And in light of the recent events, I just wish to add my own commitment to continuing to learn from and listen to the voices of Aboriginal people. If we are unable to have a federal body that will do that at this current time, then myself and the RSE project team will continue to genuinely listen to and engage with Aboriginal people when we're talking about programs that impact them. I think also in the relationships and sexuality education space, we need to demonstrate what respect looks like. And respect is genuinely listening to people and paying attention to their lived experience. So in the time of Camberang, which are where some of these floral images have come from, and the time of birth, I just reflect on those messages. So apologies that I couldn't provide a very engaging, I wasn't going to sing or do any of that stuff that we normally, that are so fabulous to those presenters when they make those welcomes. I'll now also want to recognise, of course, many of you will know, that it is World Teachers' Day. So, round of applause for those fabulous educators. You do amazing work, and hats off to you, honestly and truly. What you do is so important. And so again, I thank you for your efforts, and particularly for your dedication to the RSE space. And I also want to recognise that it is the day for Daniel. So an acknowledgement that there's a lot of topics that we have to cover when we do really comprehensive relationships and sexuality education, but the protective behaviours and child protection is so important as well. So I just want to acknowledge that it is also the day for Daniel. I'm now going to hand over to Meredith Jane Hammat, MLA. She is going to make an opening address on behalf of the West Australian State Government. So thank you, Meredith.
Well, Kaya, it's really great to be here this morning, and thank you for the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of the Minister for Health, the Honourable Amber Jade Sanderson. I also wanted to begin by firstly acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And in doing that, I wanted to acknowledge the role that Aboriginal people played as the first educators for their children, and the role that Aboriginal people continue to play in our classrooms today, often very generously sharing their culture, their stories, their traditions. And I think that is a really powerful way that we can advance reconciliation by, as we've already heard, sharing stories, sharing culture, listening. And so they play an incredibly important role in our classrooms. As I said, it's really great to be here this morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you. And I wanted to thank, first of all, the people who were involved in organising this important event. I should say that part of my role, I'm the member for Mirrabooka. I call it the centre of the universe. Some people might not agree, but I think it's a wonderful place. But I also am the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Education, and a few other different portfolios as well. But I spend a lot of time assisting the Minister, particularly in the education space, and I'm also very passionate about the role that our schools and our educators play in transforming the lives of young people. So it is World Teachers' Day today that we're celebrating, and so I also wanted to thank all of the people here today for the work that they do, but acknowledge our teachers more broadly around the state for the incredible work that they do transforming the lives of young people. And you know that, I think, as well as anyone because of the important roles that you're playing in your schools. In recent years, there's been a significant public interest and a call for action to address concern relating to the many elements associated with relationships and sexuality education. For example, things like consent education, respectful relationships, and gender equity. These are all important topics for our young people. RSE has long been a priority public health strategy for the WA state government, with long-term funding invested in school-based RSE for over 20 years to improve health outcomes in the community. It's an essential part of the holistic approach to the prevention of sexually transmissible infections, blood-borne viruses, unplanned pregnancies, intimate partner violence, and sexual assault. So we acknowledge the vital role that schools play to deliver RSE in an environment that's safe, that's supportive, and that's skilled. High-quality RSE programs in schools not only provide young people with accurate and reliable information, which we know is incredibly important, but also develops in the young people confidence and skills to empower them to enjoy happy, healthy, and respectful relationships, all of which we know have far-reaching benefits to themselves, their families, their communities, and in fact, our whole state. The WA Government, through the Sexual Health and Bloodborne Virus Program at the Department of Health, is really proud to fund Curtin University's RSE project, which provides a range of professional development opportunities to WA schools in this area of RSE. Curtin University is currently the only university in Western Australia that offers undergraduate and postgraduate units focused solely on the delivery of RSE, helping multiple school communities in WA deliver a whole school approach to RSE. Today's program, which I've had a quick look at, is a real testament to all of the incredible work that's already happening here in WA. And I'm looking forward to presenting the RSE Awards later in your conference this morning to the outstanding practitioners who have implemented and improved RSE in your schools. So in closing, can I once again acknowledge all of you who are here today, either in real life or online. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, because I know that that is not always easy to do, but it is important to get professional development and to be in part of this incredibly important discussion. I hope you enjoy today's conference, but most importantly, I hope you take full advantage of the opportunities to hear from the speakers and the experts and participate in the interactive workshops. Like you, I'm committed to ensuring that our young people are happy, confident, respectful, and safe when it comes to their experiences of relationships, both now and into the future. So thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meredith. We greatly appreciate the support of the state government, and we thank you also for being here and being able to present our awards, which we're very excited to have for the first time at this event. Before I hand over to our keynote presentation, I'm acutely aware that I particularly don't like talking about young people. I like to involve young people, and I want them to be at the forefront of our conversations and our thoughts today. So we wanted to create this slide, and many of you will already be aware of this data, but we wanted to remind you of what young people are saying around the relationships and sexuality education that they're currently receiving in West Australian schools. We're very lucky, again, because of the generous support of the state government, that we're able to fund research such as this. So we do have that beautiful and quite contemporary West Australian report. And it's a very comprehensive document. So these are just some of the qualitative, open-ended comments that young people shared with us. So please just keep that in mind as we journey throughout the day, and just remember, young people really want this information, and they want it to be delivered in a sex-positive and affirming way, and we just need to do the best we can to make that happen. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Katrina Marson has been researching the protective power of sex ed to prevent sexual violence and to safeguard sexual wellbeing for over a decade. She was a criminal lawyer, or has been a criminal lawyer since 2013, primarily in the areas of family violence and sexual offences. She went on secondment for 2 years and led the implementation of the Child Sexual Abuse Royal Commission's criminal justice recommendations in the ACT before she went back to the ACC DPP as a senior prosecutor in their sexual offences unit. She then undertook a Churchill Fellowship in 2019 to research the implementation of relationships and sexuality education overseas. Her findings were published in a brilliant report called Ignorance is Not Innocence. And then she is also the lead researcher of a primary prevention at rape and sexual assault research and advocacy. She's also the president of the Relationships and Sexuality Education Alliance in the ACT. Katrina's currently taking a break from her criminal practice while she works on a PhD in sex education. She's also a columnist for The Age, and her first book, Legitimate Sexpectations, The Power of Sex Ed, which is also the title of her presentation today, was published in 2022. So I thank Katrina for joining us, and I look forward to hearing what she has to say in sharing her findings, particularly from her Churchill Fellowship. Thank you, Katrina. So I just wish to add, if anyone wants to ask questions of Katrina, that is the Slido code. But again, it sits in your program, so you're very welcome to type away and post your questions as we go. Thank you, Jacqui. Can everyone hear me okay? Up the back? That's good. Thank you, Jacqui. Thank you, everyone, for having me. This is my first time ever over West, so I'm very excited to be here. Can I please add my respects to the traditional custodians of not just the land that we're meeting on, but also I'd like to pay my respects to the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land where I live and work, and where everything that I'm about to talk to you about today, all of that work has been done. I have grown up in what's otherwise known as Canberra, and so it's my privilege to call that home. Right, so I feel a little intimidated talking to an audience of brilliant people who work in this space, and undoubtedly, in many respects, know much more about it than I do. So I am hopeful that whatever I talk about today will be useful to you, and what I'll try and do is bring, I guess, my own perspective, as Jacqui said, from the Churchill Fellowship that I did. So I'll talk a little bit about what I saw overseas from a sort of strategic advocacy perspective around sex education. And also I'll bring a little bit of my experience in the criminal law. On that note, I will talk a little bit about what I saw in the criminal law. There's one case in particular that I will talk about. I just want to give people that heads up. I won't dwell on it too much, but in order to paint a picture of how things can be different, I need to talk a little bit about how things can go wrong. So there's that heads up for you. So in saying that, I will start there with that case that I want to talk about. I'm just going to read the story straight out of the book. And I find this a really illuminating story, and I hope that you will too. Some years ago, I was on the prosecution team for a trial in Canberra. It was a case about a young man at a university college who was accused of having sex with one of his classmates when she was passed out drunk and she could not consent. But this story is not just about the accused, and it's not just about the victim. This is a story about another young man that was there that night and what he saw. Everyone else had gone out, a group of first-year friends who went to some bars in the city to drink and have fun. But not this boy. For whatever reason, he'd stayed back at the college. Later that night, he was up in the common room when he heard the door at the end of the hallway slam shut. He peered around the door to see who it was. His mate, one of the lads, was coming down the hallway with another of his friends, a young woman. She was obviously wasted, hardly able to stand. Her eyes were glazed over.
He saw immediately that she was way too drunk. His mate was propping her up, walking her towards the dorms, and as they passed, the two young men made eye contact, and the one who was later accused of sexual assault grinned, and our witness described it as a knowing look, a kind of smirk. Our witness felt deeply uneasy. Maybe his mate had just been getting her to bed safe. Had he misread that look? Should he do something? What would he say? He stared after them with a gnawing in his gut, rooted to the spot in silence. A year later, he'd sit in my office and explain that he had been struggling since his friend told him she'd been sexually assaulted, dealing with the guilt he felt for not doing anything to stop it. And what he said next stayed with me all these years. He said that after the incident, the college had organised consent and bystander intervention training, lessons about how to intervene when you see something that doesn't seem right, what to say, how to look after yourself while looking after others. This is really common, as I'm sure you're all aware, for institutions to leap into action after something has happened. I think I saw his chin wobble as he told me that if he had only had those sessions before the incident, he might have recognised what was happening and known how to stop it. His voice choked with regret and shame, and his wet eyes searched mine for judgment, I think. The trial came around and he walked up the steps of the courthouse in painstakingly polished shoes. He swore an oath to tell the truth and his hands shook when he reached for that small plastic cup of water, his only anchor in the loneliness of the witness box, where he sat and told the jury of what he'd seen that night, of what he'd failed to do. I'm convinced to this day that his evidence was crucial to the outcome of the trial, and I thought of him as the jury foreperson's voice rang out with the verdict, and of that momentary encounter between three people, a shared look that lasted seconds. It was chance that our witness had stayed home that evening, chance that found him in the common room at that hour, peering around the door, curious. And it was chance that left him caught by uncertainty, his eyes following those two figures under the fluorescent lights as they trod down the corridor towards their fate. As the last person encountered by the victim and accused before both of their lives would be forever altered, this witness believed that he'd been her last chance for the night to change course, and he'd missed it. He was there in the final steps of a journey that led to a sexual assault trial, and now he shoulders the guilt of not doing something he didn't know how to do. I suspect he'll spend years wondering what might have been different if he had been different, if he had known or acted differently. And we should all wonder alongside him, because in one way or another we are all that witness. If we could wind back time, would we only return to that moment of eye contact between two young people? Time seeming to slow down as we hold our breath and hope that one person's courage will save the day. Or would we go back further still, imagining a different journey entirely, one where we ensure that moment never even arrives? I tell that story all the time, as you can probably tell. I didn't have to read all of it from the page, and every time I have to hold on to my emotions. I find that, as I say, a very illuminating story about one of the cruxes of this issue. I worked in the criminal justice system for a decade, as you've heard from Jacqui. As of January is when I have taken my step into a hiatus. Maybe it's permanent. As a sexual offences prosecutor, I sat at the end of what felt like a cruel conveyor belt that brought me case after case of sexual violence. And I did my part for an institution that can only respond one case at a time and can only attempt to pick up the pieces after the damage has already been done. Whatever I did in court, whatever verdict was handed down, whatever sentence was imposed, none of us could reach back in time and undo what had happened. More than half of young Australian women will have experienced sexual violence by the time they're in their 20s, and more than half will have been sexually harassed since the age of 15. It's 1 in 20 for men. The National Survey of Secondary Students and Sexual Health comes out, and every few years, and like clockwork, it tells us about the devastating rates of sexual violence and harassment, and also unwanted sex, which is language that young people themselves often use to describe negative sexual experiences that may not legally be considered violence or harassment, and we should be concerned about those rates just as much. Obviously, the damage wrought by negative sexual experiences, by sexual harm, can be immense. Emotional, physical, mental well-being can be severely impacted. Hopes and dreams can go up in smoke, and entire lives can change course. You may think that it was my time in the criminal justice system that had me looking for the solution to sexual violence, looking to education and its promise of prevention. But I've actually been an advocate for education as a protective factor against sexual violence since doing my honours thesis in this topic at the very beginning of my career. Despite marching off to serve Lady Justice just as soon as I had graduated, my honours thesis actually was quite sceptical of the power of the criminal justice system to prevent sexual violence, certainly compared to the protective power of education. But my subsequent time at the coalface really showed me in Technicolor the extent to which we have failed our young people by refusing to talk to them about relationships and sex and sexuality before they need to have that information. Doing my thesis, I learned, of course, how much research and how much good work exists in Australia when it comes to relationships and sexuality education. Yet what struck me was the difficulty in translating that at scale into classrooms. The fact that we cannot guarantee every young Australian that they will access comprehensive relationships and sexuality education. And of course, you would all know that what I mean by that is education that goes beyond condoms on bananas and no means no. So in 2019, I undertook a Churchill Fellowship to find out what other countries were doing to ensure their young people were guaranteed access to comprehensive RSE. I travelled across Europe and North America to learn from some of the best examples of implementation of this kind of education, to learn about the systems, the policies and the infrastructure that they had in place in some of these countries. There were many things that I learned about what is needed to ensure sex ed is something that everyone gets access to, and I'll come to those. But underpinning all of the infrastructural things like the need to train teachers, the need to engage parents, the need to ensure that the education is designed by experts, underpinning all of those infrastructural things was one simple but in many respects profound thing. And before I tell you what that is, can I first tell you what I hear from students when I go into universities and colleges, and this may be familiar to some of you who do similar work. I have run sessions with first years, second years, even later years students about sexual wellbeing, consent, ethical behaviour, bystander behaviour. And at the end of every session, without fail, someone will say to me, "I wish we'd learned this at school." And every time that breaks my heart, because what that person is remembering is a time where they needed this information and they didn't have it, maybe with devastating consequences. You'll recall that in 2021, thousands and thousands of young Australians responded to an Instagram survey by Chanel Contos reporting that they had experienced sexual violence and harassment, often before they left school. I think that one of the most profound messages that that survey gave us was that we must give young people access to this information and education before they need to draw on it. It was young people in that survey and following that survey who were drawing the connection between the deficiency in their education and their experiences of sexual harm. And as you would know, the extensive research undertaken in this field, not just here but around the world, internationally, shows us that this education works. We know what it does to equip young people with the skills and information they need to safeguard their own and each other's sexual well-being. And it's against that backdrop of that evidence of what we know that it does to protect young people, but also to give them the skills to pursue fulfilling lives and good, healthy, happy relationships. It's against that backdrop that I ask, how can we justify our failure to ensure that all young people get access to it? And here I want to return to that one simple, profound thing that I said underpinned all of the infrastructural, practical things I observed overseas on my fellowship. And it was encapsulated by the words of the very last person I spoke to on my fellowship. The very last person I interviewed was a gentleman in Toronto. His name's Dr. Alex McKay of the Sex Information and Education Council of Canada. And he said to me, access to information that people can use to make autonomous decisions is a right. And it was his use of the word right that was an epiphany for me. And I turned over in my mind all the conversations I'd been having with people I'd been meeting over the prior 3 months across a number of different countries, politicians, policymakers, educators, teachers, sex ed designers, and I realised that everyone I'd been speaking to had used similar language. They may not have expressed it in the language of rights, but they had been using that kind of idea. And it seemed to me that everyone in these communities I'd visited had recognised that young people were entitled to this information and this education. Because healthy, fulfilling relationships and sexual well-being are core to the human experience. They're not just a luxury. And learning how to live in order to achieve those things is something that we need to do progressively from a young age. You may have heard me say, or I often say, that we don't just hand young people the keys to a car and say, best of luck, try not to crash. And we don't just toss them in the deep end of the swimming pool and hope that they won't drown. We teach them how to drive, we teach them how to swim, and not just so they don't crash and they don't drown, but so they can pursue fulfilling experiences, joyful experiences, independence and freedom. But when it comes to sex and relationships as a community, as a society, why are we willing to just let people figure it out for themselves, even when the chances of getting it wrong might mean a traumatic experience for one person and the inside of a courtroom for another? I don't think that's fair. In this country, traditionally, we have found ourselves teaching young people to be risk-averse and avoid danger. Don't get pregnant, don't get an STI, don't get raped. Maybe we might teach them, don't rape. Without equipping them with the skills and information they need to pursue fulfilling lives, lives which include healthy sexual experiences that go beyond the absence of violence. This is why I say that we need to give young people expectations of their sexual experiences, that they will not just be free from violence, but far from violent. Not aiming for just this side of legal, but the other end of the spectrum. And this is why I advocate for more than just consent education. Because a focus on consent, zeroing in on that sort of apparently transformative thing that makes something sexual violence or not, that's not going to be the difference we need to see. And the evidence shows that it's comprehensive relationships and sexuality education that works, not just consent education. When I spoke to experts in Germany, and I'll talk a little bit about this, in their Department of Health, I came to this issue as a criminal lawyer who worked in the area of sexual offences, desperate to find the preventative solution to sexual violence. I came to this issue from a violence prevention perspective. And it was on my fellowship that I was encouraged to see the difference between comprehensive RSE and sexual violence prevention, and how the two are related, but they're not one and the same, and that they actually complement each other rather than being collapsed into the one measure, if you like. It was described to me overseas, for example, that consent education is like a deficit model if it teaches young people about relationships and sex only in terms of the presence or absence of consent. Comprehensive RSE, as you would know, focuses on giving young people all the skills and information they need to pursue fulfilling, healthy, happy relationships. So what that should look like, what green flags are as well as red flags, communication skills, an ethic of intimacy, if you like. It paints a picture of that other end of the spectrum for us. And it doesn't just teach young people how to communicate in sex and relationships, but when it's done well, it shows them why they should care about that too. It works on that intrinsic motivation. If you're worried about the term sexual well-being, which in this audience I'm not sure that too many people would be worried about that term, but maybe you have questions about it, or maybe you might have met the sort of consternation that I have met when I've used the term sexual well-being. Someone once told me that my use of the word would make people think I was advocating for orgasms for everyone. That's not what sexual well-being means. It's about so much more than orgasms. It includes freedom from sexual violence and harassment or unwanted sexual experiences, but it's more than the mere absence of harm. It's a fulfilling, positive existence, not one that's just absent from violence, harm, or illness. It's a feeling of confidence, safety, and autonomy in your body, in your sexuality, in your choices. And I suspect none of you batted an eye when I use the expression mental, physical, and emotional well-being earlier, you may not even remember that I did. We can think of sexual well-being in the same terms. For many people, sexual well-being may be not having sex at all. So this is why comprehensive RSE is what we should be aiming for. And what I learned on my fellowship is how stakeholders have implemented comprehensive RSE in schools in particular, how they have worked to guarantee their young people access to this empowering education. And this has been the result, in part, as Jacqui said earlier, of listening to young people and coming to understand and acknowledge that they have a right to this information. They are the rights holders. And that failing to provide it is denying young people this fundamental right and leaving their well-being to chance. If there exists a right to live free from sexual violence, if there exists a right to sexual well-being, then access to the information and education necessary to secure those things must also be a right. May we never let another young adult say, "I wish we'd learned this at school." This is why I say that we mustn't be gatekeepers of this information, but rather act as guides, because our children and young people deserve nothing less than that. So having given you the pitch for sex education, which I probably didn't need to give this audience, let me talk to you a little bit about what I saw overseas, as I say, from that infrastructural perspective, because my interest is really in how do we go from having this as a thing we know is a great idea and translating it into every classroom and ensuring every young person has access to it. Let me try and work this. How do I? That one. Okay. I'm going to skip through some of, this is my usual slide deck. I'm going to skip through some of them, noting the audience. This is my sex ed. I don't know if anyone has this experience. This is what I got when I was in year 4, and then I remember in year 9 getting condoms on bananas, and that's the extent, at least of what I remember. Unfortunately, we know that there are many young Australians who aren't getting much better than that, even still. I don't need to tell you why it's important, you know that. Again, we see, as I say, from the international evidence, we know why this is so critical to securing well-being and self-determination for young people. So this is that quote that I've already mentioned from Dr. Alex McKay about the right to access this kind of information. I also won't dwell too much on RSE design features because, again, noting the audience, I'm sure that you are aware of some of the, what I would call the kind of minimum requirements for what RSE should look like. The fact that we don't just use one site of intervention, we try and spread it across. Obviously, it needs to be holistic, age-appropriate, repeated, consistent, and obviously we need to start as young as possible. I won't give you examples of what I saw overseas because no doubt many of them are similar and probably not even as good as some of the things that you offer. I will talk about this though, because I like to draw a comparison between this and the Where Did I Come From sex ed that I got. So Where Did I Come From? There was one copy of the book in my primary school library, and my friends and I would sneak into the aisle where it was held and we would read it. Even then we had a sense that we were doing something kind of taboo that we needed to be a bit clandestine about. And we would read it over and over again, just hungry for more information. This is before the days where you had the internet in your pocket. Compare that to this classroom bookshelf that I saw in a primary school class in England, where relationships in sex ed is the top shelf of the classroom bookshelf, and they have more than one book. They have a question box that you can put questions in, and the teacher told me that kids take books from that shelf all the time for silent reading time, and no one makes fun of them for it. No one feels shame or taboo in doing so. Compare that to the experience I had sneaking into the library to read Where Did I Come From? Okay, so this is where I really want to get to. We know why it's important. We know what it should look like. How do we make that happen? This is what I found on my Churchill Fellowship, or what I call the 6 implementation success factors for implementing relationships in sex ed. These were the consistent things I saw, manifesting slightly differently in the different countries that I went to, but consistently these things emerged when it came to strong implementation of RSE. I'm not going to read out every slide. The first thing that I observed overseas was this context of advocacy that tended to precede implementation of sex ed. It often came about because of an increased community interest in the power of education to do something, often to prevent sexual violence and child sexual abuse. I would argue that we are in that sort of perfect storm now in Australia. When I came back from my Churchill Fellowship, we were not. We were still very much at this point. I think that since then, with things like the Contos petition and other high-profile matters of sexual violence, for example, being on the front pages of our news for a number of years, we have that sort of fertile ground to really engage with this issue. The community is understanding it a bit more, the community is more invested, and politicians are recognising that they have to do something about it. On that point, politicians, the second thing that I saw was always, and I often considered this to be the most important thing, was this commitment from political institutions, our public government institutions, commitment from them to the matter of relationships and sexuality education, seeing it as a matter of public well-being, that the government, as elected by the people, had a duty to the people to safeguard their well-being through this proven measure effectively. So that emerged in slightly different ways, but as Christiane Erkens told me in Germany, you always need government to drive it, even if you have those grassroots work, which I would never sort of diminish the importance of that. You cannot just have top down, but you do need it in terms of driving it if we want to see it at scale. So this is me meeting with Kathleen Wynne, who was the former Premier of Ontario. She campaigned for her premiership on a platform that promised to improve sex education in Ontario. The sex ed curriculum there at the time, before she became the Premier, had not been updated since the 1990s, so it didn't touch on anything to do with the internet. No queer issues were addressed. It was completely outdated. So she campaigned on a platform and she was elected. I don't know if she was elected only because of that platform, but she was elected Premier, and we'll come back to her when we talk a little bit about the power of opposition to sex ed. The inset photo is from a forum I went to in the UK shortly after they had introduced their legislative mandate for all young people to have access to RSE. And it was a forum that involved a whole number of stakeholders, government officials, policymakers, schools, parent bodies, in an effort to work out, okay, now this mandate is in legislation, how are we actually going to put that into action? Now, many people in the UK would say that that mandate has had limited success for a variety of reasons. And the reason I see most commonly cited, in fact, is that there wasn't enough done to ensure the implementation of that mandate once it was put into legislation. So it's not enough to just kind of tell everyone they have to do it. There's a whole lot of other infrastructure that needs to be put in place. The third thing I observed in all of these countries was a recognition that this is a specialist subject matter. As someone overseas said to me, it can't just be Bob from geography because he's got a spare period. I would say it can be Bob from geography if he's got an interest and an aptitude and he's been trained to deliver sex education in an effective way. So we know that this is an area of specialism. It brings in a whole lot of different subject matter expertise, like pedagogy, for example, like sexology. But it also is really important that when we consider what specialism and expertise means in this area, we are also talking about co-design. So co-design with young people, for example, co-designed with disabled people, if we're talking about sex education for the disabled community. So that was something that was really entrenched overseas. So, for example, the big photo is me with Siobhan O'Higgins, who is in the School of Psychology at the University of Galway, and they have sex education and consent courses for high school students and for university students, and they do rigorous evaluation of its efficacy in order to ensure that whatever they are designing is actually working. And there's a sort of very academically rigorous process around it. The inset photo is Elspeth Reitzema from the Spring Fever program at Rutgers Institute in the Netherlands. You may have heard of their work. It's quite internationally well-renowned. It's been exported outside of the Netherlands. She has been working in this space for decades. Her whole expertise is in the design of relationships and sexuality education for primary school age students. And the Rutgers Institute is funded by the Dutch government. So we see, again, that commitment from the government, the funding coming through, and this sort of hub of expertise that is responsible for designing good quality sex education in recognition of the fact that it can't just be Bob from geography. The fourth thing that I observed is the way that they made sure that schools and teachers were equipped to deliver relationships and sexuality education, to have a whole school policy, to ensure that leadership were on board as well as the teaching staff who are actually delivering. We know, in Australia in particular, we know that lack of teacher confidence and skills is a consistent barrier to RSE delivery. That emerges consistently as one of the barriers. Teachers feel, as I've talked about in my book, I interviewed a teacher for that who described feeling really vulnerable in front of a group of kids to talk about this kind of subject matter. And I found that a really interesting expression, and one that maybe we don't necessarily consider, the vulnerability that teachers might feel. The fear, for example, of parent backlash, that they won't be supported by the school leadership for delivering this kind of thing, not knowing how to answer a curly question. Questions are inevitable in this subject area. We know that even when you do try and certain limited training sessions for teachers may not secure the fidelity that you need to the sex ed course that they've been asked to deliver. So this is something that was really prioritised overseas. The reason that we talk about schools and teachers is because schools is where you reach most kids, not all kids, but it is where you can reach most kids. Also, if we're talking about this being a matter of expertise and something where we want that quality assurance, you have a workforce already where you can try and ensure that degree of quality assurance, provided you are training them effectively and giving them the skills and confidence they need. It's also really important for young people to learn from the everyday adults in their lives. Teachers are the everyday adults in their lives. And to learn alongside their peers and see that this is not just a matter for the private family unit, but is actually something that we talk about in public spaces. Those are some of the barriers that I've just referred to, and we see that lack of teacher training and confidence emerges as the second last dot point on that list. This is an example from another example I saw overseas where this classroom teacher, this is primary school, this classroom teacher had been trained by the local education health department in the Shire of Shropshire, and she had been trained to deliver this kind of education to her kids. Now, this just happened to be the day they were looking at consent. It wasn't just a consent course, but I happened to be there on consent day, and the kids had clearly done a lot of activities and exercises around this because they had such a degree of literacy and confidence around this subject matter that this was clearly not just a one-off lesson that they'd had in the semester or even the year. The fifth thing I observed was the engagement with parent, caregivers, community. We know that parents are the first educators of young people. We know that a good sex ed lesson means nothing if the kid goes home and those lessons aren't carried on around the dinner table, or if they even hear something like, I don't know why you're learning about that. Well, that's not important. That can dilute, at the least, the efficacy of whatever lesson even if it's the best lesson delivered by the most confident provider, that kind of friction with maybe the messages that we're getting at home can dilute the efficacy of the lessons they're getting at school. Parents are, as we know, parents are really supportive of relationships and sexuality education in Australia. Some research that Jacqui and Hannah and a number of us here have done shows that nearly 90% of parents are supportive of better relationships and sexuality education in schools in Australia. And that's really important when we know that fear of parental backlash is a barrier to the delivery of RSE, both in schools and at a political level as well. I never advocate for sex education to be siloed to the home or to the school or to both of those places. This is a community-wide effort that we're talking about. But when we are talking about RSE in schools, it does need to be a partnership between school and home. And what I observed overseas was a really strong investment in that partnership. So for example, this sex education provider, every time they run a session in a school, they have a parent session before that where they talk to the parents about exactly what it is that they'll be delivering to those kids, slide by slide. And this is something that we see a lot in the provision of sex ed by external providers in Australia as well. A lot of external providers do also invest in trying to build up that relationship and that engagement with the parent community. Sometimes it can be difficult because the only parents you might get at an info session like this are the ones who are invested in it already or the people who oppose it, and trying to capture those people in the middle can be difficult. But, for example, in, let's say in the Netherlands, they create all these resources for parents and community, again, out of Rutgers. So that same institute creates these resources, these pamphlets that are for parents of kids of a particular age group, so they have different age groups, and they talk about, here are the questions and behaviours you might expect to see around sexuality from your young person in this age group. Here's how you might respond to those questions. And those resources are not just available at the school site, but they might also be in paediatricians' offices and other places where parents may go. So again, we see that investment from government through to the experts, through to design of resources that is endeavouring to engage beyond the school site and engage the parent community. Evaluation and accountability is really important. Obviously, we want to evaluate to make sure that whatever we're delivering is effective. I quite like this quote from, again, Christiane Erkens, that prevention is always extremely difficult to prove because you're measuring the absence of something in the hope that you caused that absence. But you can still evaluate the efficacy of courses and lessons, and you can look at literacy and confidence, for example. Accountability is really important, and this is what we see maybe with the UK example, where you introduce a legislative mandate. How do you actually make sure that mandate is coming to fruition and that schools, for example, are complying with what that mandate requires them to do? There was an effort, for example, in the UK to have their school investigative body, Ofsted, for example, to actually go into schools and make sure that they were delivering RSE. But as I said, there's been some scepticism about the effectiveness of that mandate. All right, I will end talking about risks to implementation. Obviously, funding, time in the curriculum, those sorts of things are significant risks to the implementation of RSE, but I want to focus particularly on this. This is a German word, the pronunciation of which I'm not going to attempt, because I do butcher it every time I try. It means early sexualization. This is the fear that a lot of people have about sex education, that the more you talk to young people about this stuff, that it's going to encourage them to engage in sexual behaviour earlier than they otherwise would. The evidence is really clear internationally over decades that this is not true, the opposite is true. The more you give this kind of education to young people, the later they are likely to have their first sexual experience. The later they are likely to have their first sexual experience, and the less likely they are to have negative sexual experiences. But this fear is one that is wielded politically often, and this is where this word came from in Germany. It was the Conservative political party who started to wield this language and this word to stoke fear and concern in the community about what sex education was doing to young people. And it's a very strategic it is a strategy, it's a political tactic. And so I want to return to Kathleen Wynne, who I said I would talk about again, the Premier of Ontario. She campaigned on a platform to improve sex education. She was elected, she made good on her promise, and they improved sex education, they updated it. They made it, I guess, more progressive, if you like. And there were significant protests. There was an extreme backlash in the media, and it politically damaged her. She was ousted at the next election. Again, I don't know if it was because of this issue, but it did politically damage her. And her opponent promised that if he was elected, he'd roll it back to the 1990s sex ed curriculum. So it's a real barrier, the fear this opposition to sex ed and the fear that it will sexualise young people. It's something that I want to emphasise in these countries I visited overseas. It's not like even where they do good sex ed implementation, it's not like they don't have this opposition. It's not unique to Australia, like we saw with Safe Schools, like we saw with the response to Welcome to Sex. That's not unique to Australia. It is present in other countries, even where they do sex ed well. The difference was that they met that opposition. They responded to the concerns. They didn't run away from it. There was the political courage and the political will to stand on the evidence and say, this is what our young people need. This is what the evidence says for their well-being. And so we'll actually meet this opposition. So I think that's really important, because sometimes it can be a bit of a sort of spectre of opposition as a barrier to sex ed delivery. Also in Australia, we have a bit of apathy around sex ed. We culturally tend to prioritise academic achievement, sporting achievement. We don't prioritise social and emotional learning, particularly relationships and sex ed, as much. So you get opposition not just from fear, but also from apathy and perhaps a lack of understanding. And that's something that as a community we need to work on, is actually engaging with these issues, explaining why sex ed is so important and why it's nothing to be afraid of. And that may be, again, where we come back to that political investment in the issue, that government investment, maybe a public health campaign, for example, that actually endeavours to explain to the community the value of this work and why it's nothing to be afraid of. Okay, so that is a quick snapshot of what I learned overseas, as I say, from that infrastructural perspective, which I hope is useful strategically if we're talking about advocacy for sex education. I think I'm right on time. And do we have time for questions now? Great. So if anyone has any questions, happy to take them from Slido or the old-fashioned way, whatever you like.
Thank you, Katrina. Can we give her a round of applause, please? So we already have quite a few come through on
great.
Slido, and you're welcome to add more if anyone has any other burning questions for Katrina. Yep. You're also able to upvote as well, so if there's a particular question that you like, please vote for it. So I want to start by asking you...
Do you want to share these with me?
You can share. I want to ask you, first of all, where you think we currently sit in Australia in comparison to all the international countries that you visited.
Sure. So we were talking about this last night, actually. Every country that I went to, they were all like, oh, God, we've got so far to go. And I felt from where I sat and where we are in Australia, it was like, well, yes, so much further ahead than us. There are different, I guess, barriers, or there are different stages in different countries. We all share similar barriers to RSE delivery, but I think Germany and the Netherlands, for example, were some of what I saw as being the stronger jurisdictions in terms of where they're at in sex ed implementation. Partly because, I mean, if you take Germany, for example, they actually have a dedicated department in their federal Department of Public Health, a dedicated sexuality education branch and a sexual violence prevention branch. So as I said, they don't collapse them, they see them as different, they work together. But it means that they're like us, education is the purview of their states, but they still have that federal investment, and they conduct a lot of research, including internationally collaborative research, and they design programs and resources that they then help roll out at the state level. So, you know, that's something that I would love to see here, that kind of institutional support for this as an issue. But as I said, I think all of these countries think that they've got so much further to go, and no doubt they do, but I think we're definitely lagging behind.
Can I also ask you to reflect on your 15-year-old self and how you think that your 15-year-old self would feel about your current achievements and approaches in 2023?
I mean, my 15-year-old self would never have guessed that sex ed would become my thing. I don't even know that my 26-year-old self would have thought this would become my thing. But I certainly don't regret, I say this 10 months in, I don't regret leaving the criminal justice system, leaving law, for example. So I'm quite proud of having the courage to leave what was a very, a successful career, I suppose, and one that I had seen for myself as a bit of a pathway laid out before me. I've been proud to kind of give that up and pursue this full time. I don't know if that answers that question, but...
Can you go back? You mentioned the concept and the topic of unwanted sex in your presentation. Can you just talk a little bit how this differs from sexual assault or rape and why it's so prevalent?
Sure. So I guess unwanted sex, the reason I use that language is because it's language that is often used by young people. As I said, we see it emerge in the National Survey of Secondary Students and Sexual Health as language that is used to capture experiences that young people themselves may not want to characterise as sexual violence for their own experiences that they've had, and I think it's important to respect that. And there are certainly experiences that may not be legally recognised as sexual violence. We may not get to the point where you can show beyond a reasonable doubt that someone has been sexually assaulted, for example, but that doesn't mean that a sexual experience was ethical or fulfilling for everyone involved. And so, for example, sometimes I think of unwanted sex as maybe including sexual activity where the other person wasn't putting any pressure on someone to engage in sexual activity, but maybe because of peer pressure, of a desire to be sexually active, for example, they felt that they needed to, or they thought that they wanted to engage in sexual activity that perhaps later with reflection they felt they weren't ready for. So it was unwanted in the sense that there were these external pressures that were being brought to bear rather than it coming from the other person, for example. So that's where I sort of see the nuances between sexual violence compared to that umbrella term. But the reason I use the term is, as I say, very much because that's a term that young people often use.
Okay, next question. I feel a barrier to us implementing this is getting training on these things ourselves. Where do you think are some good places for some self-education?
Self-education, okay. I mean, the RSE project does great, great professional development, and there are sort of professional development options around the country. There aren't a lot, though, unfortunately. In terms of self-education, am I allowed to promote my book? Yeah, I mean, a lot of this for me has been a self-educated journey. There's a lot of research, as I say, that comes out of Australia, really good researchers and providers doing good work on this stuff here in Australia. I also, ever since doing that advanced RSE course that we did with Justin Hancock overseas in the UK, his website, bish.co.uk, I find really useful and helpful. So I suppose it's about finding good resources. Now, what is a good resource in this space is a fair enough question sometimes, but BlueMed also has, it's a bit of a hub of good quality resources that you can access for a variety of different sort of angles that you're coming to sex ed from.
I also will just do a little plug for the GDHR website as well. So just remember that is a great repository of good quality resources. And then also don't forget about all of those agency displays that we have available during the morning tea and lunch break as well. They all do fabulous work and can provide professional learning as well. And then also the GDHR website will have a whole list of other resources that you can tap into. Do you think our international policies reflect a positive and rights-based frame rather than those different policies that are a bit more reactive to specific issues like STIs and bloodborne viruses or family violence?
I love this question. Australia, unfortunately, is quite hypocritical when it comes to human rights. We are big about banging the drum for other countries and other communities to respect human rights. Well, some of them, not all of them, to respect human rights, but we don't do very well about that internally, domestically. And in fact, we reject efforts by the international community to criticise Australia's commitment to human rights domestically. So unfortunately, no, I don't think our international position on human rights at all generally is one that we should feel particularly proud of. And I certainly don't see that in Australia there is this recognition of it as a right. We don't tend to use rights language very much. We don't have a federal human rights charter, for example. There are only 3 jurisdictions in the country that have a human rights statute, so the ACT, Victoria and Queensland. Only the ACT has the right to education enshrined in that Human Rights Act. The extent to which it is interpreted to cover sex education is untested, I'd say, at this point. And, you know, I think we see that in the language that is used around sex education. I remember going on TV shortly after the whole Qantas petition blew up, and the TV host asked me, shouldn't it be young men who are getting this education, as they're the ones who are more likely to perpetrate it, and perpetrate sexual violence. And it really struck me in that question was the understanding of this as some kind of chore, as some kind of punishment for doing something wrong, as opposed to a right that all young people have access to education and information that doesn't just treat them as potential perpetrators or victims of violence, but sees them as rights holders in and of themselves to access information that will secure their well-being. Even if they never experience violence, they still deserve. Even if we were to eradicate sexual violence, young people would still deserve relationships and sexuality education. So no, I don't think that we see this as a rights-based issue. We also have a bit of tension in this country between child rights and parental rights, which comes into play as well.
You also reflected on the Spring Fever program in the Netherlands. Would you mind just elaborating a little bit on that?
Like what it is?
Yep,
sure. So it's a primary school-based program. It has been translated into other languages and exported to other countries, as I say. One of the things they do, for example, for the schools that they're in, is the school will have a relationships and sexuality education week at the beginning of the semester or the year, and they effectively celebrate RSE. So they decorate the school, like love hearts and things. They wear red to signify love. They have a theme song. It's adorable. So there is that real kind of cultural celebration of sex ed. As I said, it's a bit different to our approach to sex ed, where it's kind of a checkbox that we might have to get to if we can squeeze it into the curriculum, because we don't see it as important as those academic, those sporting sort of pursuits that we traditionally value here. So that program, for example, has exercises where they get young people, for example, to touch different materials against their skin, like sponges, steel wool, feathers, and to articulate what that feels like. So learning to practice putting words around how we feel physically, which is not an inherent skill that we all just grow up getting by osmosis. It's something that you actually need to practice. So that's an example of one of the things they do, but really I think what I loved about it was that real cultural celebration around it, and how much it is embedded in the schools that it's been in, how long standing it's been. But, you know, there were still people in the Netherlands who were like, it's not enough, because it can't just be that sort of 1 week at the beginning of the year or the semester. It needs to be ongoing. And so you see this kind of cost benefit where, and you see this around the world, where you want to get as much as you can, and so you may concede to having just a week at the beginning of the semester or the year so that you're in that school, but ideally, of course, you'd like to be in there a lot more frequently. Yeah.
Great. How much of a difference have you seen between programs that are provided by external providers in comparison to teachers who might be upskilled and confident in this space?
Yeah, so this is an ongoing debate about whether sex ed should be delivered by internal teachers or by external providers. I advocate for a hybrid approach. I can see the value in both. It's really important that we have external providers because they tend to be experts in this stuff. All they do is sex education, so they're very good at what they do, and they can respond to questions really well, for example. There are a lot of students who report that they feel less awkward when it's someone they don't know or don't see every day who they can learn from and ask questions about. They don't feel as afraid, for example, to reveal anything about their own experiences to someone who isn't their teacher. So that's obviously very important. At the same time, it is important, as I say, that we don't let young people see this as something secret and special, that what I call the Mary Poppins of sex ed kind of parachutes in and then parachutes out again. And it's just this very secret, special thing that happens once a year, once a term, that it's actually something that's embedded culturally in our public spaces. And it is important that they see the everyday adults in their life talking about this with as little shame as we can muster, and I don't like to say with no shame because we all have it deeply embedded, but as little shame as we can muster and as well as we can muster. So I advocate for a hybrid approach, because when it comes to sex ed, I think more is more.
In a similar vein, did you see any examples internationally of how school nurses might have been used?
No, I didn't. Not with school nurses, no.
Okay, which I think is just a slightly different model that they have internationally. And again, we've got wide disparity across the country around, and even within Western Australia, about how our nurses may or may not be used. Any one particular resource or activity that particularly resonated for you on your travels that you liked?
One thing that really resonated with me was seeing how early that shame around our bodies sets in. So I'm not going to do it today, I often get people to do the exercise with me, but in England there was this provider who would go into schools and they would do, at a young age, they'd do sort of protective behaviour stuff. And there was one school we went into where they had pre-kindy as well as from kindergarten up, and I went with them to each of these classes, and we started in the pre-kindy age, so basically like 3-4 year olds, and they would ask them to do this exercise where they ask them to, they say my mouth, my chest, my penis or vagina, my bottom, these are all the parts of my body that no one can look at or touch unless I want them to. And so it's that sort of protective behaviour exercise. And at 3 or 4 years old, the kids have no problems with the word penis and vagina, or more often peanuts and vagina. So they have no problems with that. They're bellowing it, they don't see the issue with it. Then we went round the corner to the next grade up, so 5 years old. And they asked to say penis and vagina, and you start to see the reluctance, the confusion, the sort of sheepish grins, the embarrassment. And the educators would say to them, does anyone think penis and vagina are naughty words? And hands would go up, and then of course as soon as 1 or 2 kids' hands go up, everyone else's hands go up. And they say to them, do you think your teachers would let us in here to teach you naughty words? And they talk about how it's penis and vagina are just like nose, chin, elbow, knee. These are the words of penis, vagina. These are the words, the names for our body parts, like a sex ed, heads, shoulders, knees and toes. But I found that really illustrative, just how early that shame around the names for our body parts sets in. And if we feel that they're naughty, the words for our body parts are naughty, what does that mean for the body parts themselves? So that really struck me, and I tell that story a lot in terms of trying to convince people about why we need to start so early when it comes to sex education.
Nearly done, I promise. I've got 2 more for you.
I could stay all day.
No. So this will be interesting. I want to know, teachers would like to know how they can encourage our parliamentarians and politicians to support sex education beyond funding.
Yeah, okay. Yep. I think from a political perspective, we need to get to the point of understanding, like I said, why this is so important and why it's nothing to be afraid of. And politicians will frequently hear from people who oppose sex education. I wonder how much they hear from people who want better sex education. So one of the things I saw overseas, for example, was a sex ed provider had developed template letters for people to send to their MPs to say, I want you to do better on sex ed in this community, in this electorate. Because as I say, they will hear a lot from the opponents who are a vocal minority. We know that from our data. They're a vocal minority, but they are noisy. And if that noise fills up a vacuum of sort of silence, it seems like there's nothing out there that's rebutting that. So I think that it is important, not just for teachers, but for parents and community members to actually speak to their elected representatives and say, we want more on this and here's why, and to just detail that it needs to be more than funding. Teacher lack of skills and confidence, as I say, is a significant and consistent barrier to sex education, and explaining that, you know, there needs to be more in the way of pre-service training for teachers, for example, not to mention the professional development that comes afterwards, and the supporting of schools and school leadership, because it's not just about the teachers who are delivering the sex ed being able to do that. They need to be supported by school leadership, and school leadership needs to know that the education department's going to have their back if they face any opposition, for example. So bringing in politicians and sort of encouraging them to recognise how this is a political issue is something that we should all feel empowered to do, even as individual community members, not just because of our status as teachers or parents or sex ed providers.
Okay, and final question for you. What is something that inspires you each day to continue to make a difference in this area?
I wish we got this at school. That comment is what really inspires me. Yep.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Please give her another round of applause.
That's me? No, that's you. There you go.
Katrina has very generously agreed. She's got copies of her book which are going to be available if you would like to purchase one during morning tea, and she's going to be around to sign those as well. I've read this book. It is absolutely brilliant. The one story that she shared this morning is sort of indicative of the theme of the book. She does a beautiful job of weaving in the stories of young people and connecting it to the work that she's done during the Churchill Fellowship. So I really encourage you to check that publication out. It is really brilliant. We're now going to hand over to Sharelle Tulloh from the West Australian Health Department, who is going to provide a bit of a sector update for us, particularly in relation to what the Health Department has been doing in this space and the Growing and Developing Healthy Relationships resource. So thank you, Sharelle. I've been furiously taking notes because I could listen to Katrina all day. Incredible. Thank you so much for coming. Amazing presentation. Very inspiring. Yeah, I've literally written reams of notes here that I need to weave into my presentation. Jacqui, where is the button? This one. Just the green button? Okay. So can I just get a bit of a show of fingers? How many GDHR symposiums have people been to previously? We've been to 1, 2, 3. Have we got newbies? Have we got... Oh, hold it up. Hang on, I didn't get to see. Oh, yeah, there's a few newbies. There's a few that are veterans. I feel like this is a kind of full circle because I was actually trained in the original GDHR 20 plus years ago, and I was also trained by the wonderful Dr. Laurel Mabry, who is sorry? She's in Thailand. And it feels like it's sort of come full circle. And I remember something distinctly that Laurel said to us when we were trained in RSE way back when. And she said, if you can teach sex and drugs, you can teach anything. And I think that's so true of any content. So as you can probably guess, teaching is my background, and I moved into this space. I just wanted to do something a little bit... Oh. Sorry, Jacqui. Yeah, not working. Oh, the big one. The big one, as opposed to the big one, as opposed to the little one. So I wanted to sort of explain a little bit why this is so important to Department of Health, and it is really relevant to everything that Katrina has been saying. So I just wanted to sort of explain where we fit into the scheme of things. So we are WA Department of Health, and we fit within the Public and Aboriginal Health Division. And it's weirdly, I suppose, in some ways, we fit under the Communicable Disease Control Directorate. And then within that is the Sexual Health and Bloodborne Virus Program. So I've been leading the sexual health team, that arm, for the past 3 years or so. And our primary sort of business is the prevention of STIs and bloodborne viruses. Now, that doesn't sound all that important when you listen to all of the things that Katrina was saying, but what I think I'm incredibly proud of in the work that I do is, and I think that we're incredibly lucky in WA, is that the Department of Health really see comprehensive RSE as a primary public health strategy, and they have put funding into this space for well over 20 years, into GDHR, into the teacher training. So I think we're very, very lucky. And when you hear that, if it doesn't work if you don't have that advocacy from government as well as from the grassroots, I do really think and truly believe that we have that here in WA. So why is RSE important to public health? For all of you maths teachers there, you're going to geek out on some of this data. I wanted to share, I've just got 3 slides of epidemiology because I think it is important to sort of frame this. This is why we fund so much. So these are chlamydia notifications in WA. Well, that's our highest, most commonly notified STI in WA. And you can see there that it falls mainly in that 15 to 29-year-old age bracket. We get around about 10,000, 11,000 notifications per year of chlamydia. Now, this slide means even more after, I guess, recent events. Aboriginal populations are disproportionately affected by STIs. And you can see there, that light blue are Aboriginal notifications and the darker blue are the non-Aboriginal notifications. I feel a bit ashamed showing this slide because I feel that it's just incredibly sad that we've not been able to have a better representation of Aboriginal voice, but I do want to frame it in the positive that Aboriginal people are a priority population. We consult with community as much as we possibly can, and we are advocating really, really strongly in this space, and we will continue to do so. So I do hope that the Aboriginal community realise that there are lots of people advocating for them, and we will continue to do that. Regional areas are disproportionately affected. So you can see those darker areas of WA have higher notes. I've just used chlamydia as an example, but this is pretty much representative of all of our STIs and bloodborne viruses. And we have a syphilis outbreak. A lot of people think syphilis, wasn't that like Henry VIII or something? But it's back. It's back with a vengeance, and you can see it's climbing rapidly, exponentially for those maths teachers. Please use this in your maths lessons. It's not just health. trying to convince your maths department of that one. I'd love to see that. On a more serious note, the seriousness of syphilis is that we used to have 0 notifications of congenital syphilis. We've had 12 over the past 10 years, and more than half of those were in 2021, and they generally result in stillbirth and death. So I think I've probably illustrated the answer to this. Why are STIs a public health concern? They're easily spread, they're common, they often have no symptoms. The most common symptom is none at all, so people often don't know they have them. There's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of taboo. This is the doom and gloom stuff. Please bear with me, it's not all doom and gloom. If untreated, pelvic inflammatory disease, infertility, premature births, stillbirths, even death. If you have untreated syphilis, it can result in death. The good news, this is all entirely preventable, and this is why it is a massive public health issue, because this is all preventable. These are all treatable, but you have to know you have an STI or a bloodborne virus to be able to treat it and prevent all of these things. So education is key. This is our public health response. We do prevention and education, testing, treatment, workforce development, all of these things, lots of research. So I'm just going to show you some of the things that we do in terms of our response. In terms of our strategies, I remember being at a conference, I think it was last year, where somebody did a desktop review of all of the policies within Australia. WA was the only sexual health policy that even mentioned human rights and sexual rights. Now, yay, win for WA, and I'm really proud that that was us, but also not good enough. Not good enough. It's our guiding principle, but it's got to be a lot stronger. So, yay, we do know that that's important, but as we are currently writing our next set of strategies, it's really, really important that those are captured in that. Young people, obviously, are a massive priority population. Now, this really rings even more true after Katrina's presentation. This is the World Health Organization's definition of sexual health, and I'm just going to read it out because I think it's really, really important. It is the physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease, dysfunction, and infirmity.
where everybody deserves to have positive and respectful approach to sexuality and sexual relationships, to enjoy pleasurable and safe sexual experiences that are free of coercion, discrimination and violence. And those rights are right back there again. The rights of all persons are respected, protected and fulfilled. Now, if you look at that teeny tiny little bit down the bottom, this definition has been around since 2006. It's been around a long time, but we're still not quite doing it right, are we? If we're still focusing on that disease and dysfunction and we're not focusing on those rights, then we've still got some work to do. So, what do? Well, WA Department of Health fund a wide variety of non-government organisations, many of whom are in the room today and have wonderful displays, so it's fantastic that they are all here. They do workforce training, they do youth education, peer education, they have clinical services. We also employ regional sexual health coordinators, project officers across WA. We do statewide campaigns, and for those of you old enough in the room, show of hands if you remember the Grim Reaper campaign. Ooh, yeah, lots. So when I started working at Department of Health, I was shocked to find out that that campaign was actually only on TV for a week. I remember that campaign so vividly and so real. There was a little girl with little blonde pigtails and it felt very visceral to me. And you know, that has produced the stigma and discrimination for decades and we're still battling it. So we try really, really hard. Oops. How do I go back, Jacqui? The little red arrow, which I'm just going to leave it there because the little red arrow is definitely not working. So we try very much to have a positive approach to our sexual health campaigns. And the slide before showed all of those things. This one might be particularly interesting to the people in the room. These are our Levers campaigns. So this will be in market very, very soon in the lead up to Levers Week. Oh, now it's gone back. There we go. There's all those positive. That light and bright, we've really moved away from that taboo, stigma, you know, shame, all of those things, and that scare tactics. They just don't work. There's decades of evidence that prove that doesn't work. So we've really gone with a much lighter, brighter sort of talk to your partners, get tested, protect, those really positive messages. So there's our Levers campaign. We do TikTok and Snapchat and whatever our media buyers tell us are the best bang for our buck, no pun intended. And we have done things like engaged young people to design our condom wallets. So you can see there that this year we've got Wrap It Up with a bit of a Barbie theme because down in Levers they have a Barbie themed night. So we really try to make it contemporary. And I think it's, just a bit of fun as well. We do lots of things like media releases. Those media releases are written by the sexual health team, but they actually are then taken on by we'll get West Australian and radio stations that want interviews based on that media statement. Why does it keep going without me pressing? Oh dear. No. We also have a big range of hard copy resources, which you can see there, and there is a stall out the front, which I'm very rarely at, but you are more than welcome to take all of the resources that are on there. We've got Talk Soon, Talk Often, which is our rather famous and fantastic parent resource, which is now also a wonderful interactive website. We've got the puberty books, the relationships and sex books, and a whole host of other things. Like we have wonderful students from Curtin University that come and do placements with us, and they help us update things like our sexting brochure, which used to look really, really boring and governmenty, and now says "send nudes?" ? Note the question mark. It's not an instruction. We also have free condom dispensers that we distribute across WA, so you can see them there. And on our Get the Facts website, you can actually locate where all of those free dispensers are. So one of the barriers I think in schools is that we get a lot of teachers say, can we hand out condoms? And there are restrictions a little bit, and that can be down to individual schools. So what we did is we decided that we would put this map up where if you can't provide condoms in schools or the young people don't have access, you can say, jump on here, put in your postcode, there's your nearest service that can provide them for you. So we'll have a suite of websites. You obviously know about GDHR, and Get the Facts also has a wonderful Ask a Question feature, a little bit like Dolly Doctor, where you can write in and one of our health professionals will answer the question. It's always very, very interesting. And I can tell you that the vast majority of questions we get are really basic information. It is a lack of understanding of their bodies. It is a, could I be pregnant if I sat on a toilet seat? It really, really is that super basic stuff. We've got our Healthy Sexual website, and on there we offer free STI testing for, I think it's been moved up to anyone under 35. So you can actually fill out a form, you can take it to any Path West clinic without the need to go to a GP, without the need for a Medicare card, and you can get a free STI test. So trying to remove those barriers that we know impede young people from getting tested, or anybody getting tested for that matter. We also have Let's Yarn, which is a resource developed specifically for people working with Aboriginal young people. So, the exciting news about GDHR. We are in the last and final stages of a brand new website, and it is pretty exciting. It's got a brand new look and feel. We've engaged with a fantastic young artist who's drawn a suite of these beautiful illustrations which are going to be throughout our books and throughout our website, and there is a whole suite of new content updated with the new curriculum. And this is kind of a sneak preview. You are the first people to even get a glimpse of what that's going to look like, and fingers crossed it will be launched. I was really hoping for the start of the school year, but that might be a little bit ambitious. It will be very, very soon. Keeping an eye on the time. So on the new website, we have aligned, and Katrina also mentioned the international technical guidance. All of our resources are aligned to WA curriculum, but they're also evidence informed by international best practice. So we align it with both of those for a WA context, and the new website is all tagged for everything, all the lesson plans, all of the things on the site are tagged to be both of these, so they have references for all of them. And really excitingly, down the bottom there you can see it actually mirrors similar to the way the ACARA site works and the SCASA site work, where you've got the year group and you can scan through the different year groups to see the scaffolding of the lessons and how the age and stage appropriate information is developed across the years in all of those different topic areas. So if you're after something really specific on something like relationships, you can filter it down, or if you want to see like the full scaffolded pedagogy of lessons, they also run down the page as well. You might be familiar with the wonderful Relate and the incredible people in the room that contributed to or led this project. Relate is going to be updated, and the lesson plans from Relate are going to be fed into that system as well. So they are going to be all throughout and all tagged as well. It's going to be really brilliant. We have created, similar to what SCASA have, they've got a really useful document on their website of how the new descriptors and some useful resources to help teach them. So we have been adding to the GDHR content to make sure that all of those new areas are well covered, and we're addressing any of the gaps that we're finding as we're mapping that. This particular document is now available on the GDHR website in a link, which I can provide later. I just want to talk a little bit about the WA RSE Advisory Group, because I think this is where some really exciting work is happening. Off the back of Chantal Contos and the spate of media around sexual assault pre-COVID BC, there was a real feeling, I think, of upset and dread, and I called to all of the key stakeholders to come and have a round table, and I was incredibly humbled and pleased that all of these amazing people came to this round table. There were 20 plus people in the room from across sectors, from justice, from communities, from health, from education, from all of these places. They were all in a room together, and they were all in the room together because they all feel really, really strongly that we're doing great work, but we need to do it better, and we need to do it in a more joined up approach. both within WA and nationally. So I would just like to sort of, I suppose, share the good news story that there is a lot of work going on in this space, and there are amazing people in this room that are part of the WA RSE Advisory Group, and we are advocating and driving changes to policy, changes to how RSE is rolled out across the state. We do have our wonderful grants, which we will continue to provide to schools where they can get up to $1,200 to help develop their RSE program. A lot of schools have no budget, and if they do have budget, it goes to other areas. We won't name names. Generally, health doesn't get very much, and generally RSE gets even less. So these are specifically for you to be able to buy resources, run projects, run events, and the RSE Awards, which are coming up very, very soon, are all people who have been recipients of these grants and done amazing things. We've got a little bit of research, but I think I might, do we have time? We've got time, okay. We, as Jacqui mentioned, we fund a great deal of research because we do feel very strongly that all of the work that we do needs to be evidence-informed, and it does help us to monitor and identify gaps and to track our progress so that we've got something to really measure ourselves against. So the National Survey of Australian Secondary School Students, which Katrina mentioned a few times, is something that is nationally funded, but WA actually fund a state-specific report so that we've got really localised relevant information. We also have the parent survey, which Curtin did a national study, and again we funded the national study but also a WA report, so we've got the evidence base for everything that we do. I just want to share quickly some of the stats from the latest survey because it is still quite new data. So for those of you who have seen me before, this is my nod to PE. This is the heads, shoulders and knees of stats. It's maths, it's health, it's RSE, it's all of the things. So from this secondary school survey, how many year 10s, 11s and 12s do you think have had sex? Do you think it is 86%, 71% or 64%? It's a good time to have a stretch as well, right? If you want to stand up, feel free. 64%. What? They're not all having sex? I thought they were all having sex. Really important to note that, I think, in lessons is that, young people often think everybody's doing it, so I have to. It's not the case. 64%, not everybody. Also, the types of relationships are in. I think there's a lot of misinformation that young people are on Tinder, on Grindr, and they're having sex with random people, and actually the stats don't support that. Most of them are in a steady relationship. Some of them are with people they've known a while. There's a few that aren't sure. I would say that's not unique to young people. How many have had sex is talking about penetrative sex and oral sex. So this one just breaks it down a little bit more. How many year 10s, 11s and 12s have had oral sex? 75, 61, 39. %. Oh, I didn't get it right. Surprising? How about vaginal sex? So penis in vagina sex. 76, 63, 55. 55. How about anal sex? 26, 13, 9. 13%. Ooh, a few O's. That has gone up a little bit. I mean, we can't really compare the data from the last set of students, but I suppose it's not statistically valid, but it has gone up. I guess there's questions around what influences that. Is that young people feeling more safe to disclose their sexual behaviours? Is it porn? What is it? We're not quite sure. Now, this speaks to that unwanted sex that a few people were asking Katrina about as well. So how many, and a little bit of a content warning, I suppose, as well, just a reminder. How many have experienced unwanted sex? So this is of those 64 that have had sex, how many of them have experienced unwanted sex ever? 45, 28, 14. Yeah. Now, if you look at the last stat, it used to be 28%. So that is alarming. Now, again, is this a horror story of, oh my gosh, all these young people experience unwanted sex? Is this a good news story that people are recognising what unwanted sex is, what consent is, that they're safe to tell? I guess we can look at it from both of those points of view, but alarming nonetheless, and something we need to do something about. Oh, that didn't turn out too well. These were they were the reasons, but it's not showing up, so I'll have to skip over that one. It's not all doom and gloom. Lots of young people are saying that they are excited and satisfied and feel fantastic after their last sexual experience. There's not so much stressed and regret and sorry. So there is lots and lots of good news as well. There's lots about, I just love this quote. I've been with my partner sexually for 2 years now, and I'm in a loving, communicative relationship with him. We both know each other extremely well and our preferences. That's really the aim, isn't it? That's what we're aiming for. Just a last stat. How many do you think identify as gay, bisexual, or lesbian? So something other than heterosexual. 42, 25, or 10%. Oh, yeah, I know, right? Again, that's gone up considerably. If you look at something like the census, generally speaking, we think around about 10% of the people identify as gay or lesbian, but then who's going to be really honest on a form that you're filling out with your family and in the home? Whereas this is all online, where perhaps people are feeling a bit safer. It might be an overrepresentation in the way that the survey was sort of the way they got people to participate, but I think it is a trend, and I think it's something we really need to focus. If we are delivering RSE that is entirely heteronormative, we are missing 42% of our young people. They're switching off. So something to consider in all of our lessons. Now, here you go. Where do people get sources of information from? Friends, websites, not surprisingly. Look at that, number 3, teachers, woohoo! And internet and websites. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. Maybe direct them to the health websites, because Googling anything to do with sex is always a bit problematic. Okay, last couple of slides and then I'm done. Part of this survey, they asked students what they want in an RSE teacher. They want somebody approachable and respectful and knowledgeable with a sense of humour. They want them to be calm and unflappable. They want them to relate well to students. And they want to be asked what they want to learn. None of this, I think, is particularly surprising, and I'm sure that all of the educators in this room tick all of those boxes, so you're already way, way ahead of the game. In terms of what parents want, they want to be kept informed. They want it to be inclusive for all students. They want teachers with sufficient knowledge and skills. This is all sounding really familiar, right? They want to be supported by, they want teachers to have support of ongoing professional learning, and they want to have evidence-based teaching methods. So the good news is you're already doing all of this stuff. You're amazing, and you're about to have another fantastic day doing even more to make sure that you're meeting all of these things. So to wrap up, I just want to say thank you very, very much for coming today. I hope you enjoy the incredible program that's outlined, and I'm really excited to hand over for the RSE Awards.
Thank you very much, Sharelle. Yes, we're all a little bit excited about these. So this is new for us. This is because we did look internationally and we saw some places that were already recognising fabulous educators in their relationships and sexuality delivery. We also recognise that currently our state government funds education awards for, the best secondary educator out there and someone who's doing really great work regionally. So we really wanted to recognise and celebrate people who we think are doing amazing work, and just to elevate the status of relationships and sexuality education. So we were able to do that again through the generous funding that we received from the Health Department, and we again thank Sharelle and her team for making this happen. We put the call out and we were absolutely blown away by the number of, not only the number, but also the quality of nominations that we received. And just for transparency processes, I want to let everyone know that the judging panel included different people who were on our advisory committee for this symposium, but some of those people were also finalists. So in those instances, they did abstain from the judging, we promise, alongside some members of the RSE project team. So we were able to, we ended up with 14 finalists across 4 different categories. And we actually reached out to our finalists. We weren't sure how this was going to go, but we said, as part of being a finalist, we would love you to put together a little promotional video about what you've been doing in your schools, because we know one of the current gaps in the market is that people just want to see what others are doing. And so we were absolutely blown away by the quality of these videos. And if you have not seen them, we've got a QR code in the program. Please check them out. They are really illuminating. We've already shared them nationally, and I'm actually going to a conference overseas, and I'm going to be banging the drum there as well. So we're going to be spreading these videos far and wide, and they are just a starting point. We are very big about getting these little gold nuggets and sharing them widely to demonstrate to your fellow educators that you don't need to change the world, just some small little tweaks here and there can have some great impact. So we thank all of our finalists profusely for putting these videos together. They are highly entertaining, and they are a fabulous ongoing resource. So as I said, we've got 4 categories, and then we also had a People's Choice as well. So I'm going to ask the finalists of our first award, which was the 2023 Relationships and Sexuality Education Rising Star Award, to come forward. And if they wouldn't mind just lining themselves up here on the stage. And I'm going to ask Meredith to come forward as well and present our winner. So can I ask, and we do have a few people who are away, so not everyone will be here.
So I do know that we've got Sophie and Anita, because I do know that unfortunately Nicola is absent. But I do wish to recognise that, up you go, Anita. Nicola provided some really excellent examples of best practice RSE, and she did a fabulous job. She was very open and willing to share her training. Just a little plug, she did actually come over to Curtin and study a postgraduate studies with us in sexology, and she was very generous with her staff and went back. And you too can come and study postgraduate if you'd like to have a chat with me later. I'm very happy to tell you about what Nicola did. So she did some fabulous work and was very open in sharing with her colleagues. Sophie from Wesley demonstrated really great impact in a very short period of time, and I know even since her nomination she's gone on to do some great things, so we're really looking forward to what comes next at Wesley College. And then finally to Anita from Bramfield Primary, and it was really fabulous to see in your videos and in your nomination as well how she addressed consent in a primary school context. So we're very excited to award this first award ever to Anita Wenban from Bramfield Primary. And we've also got a certificate for you as well, Sophie, as well. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anita. Thanks, Sophie. Okay, so moving on, if we've got any finalists in the room, if they don't mind coming down to the front. So these were our regional educators. So we had Lachlan from Broome Senior High School, only a young educator, and unfortunately Lachlan was unable to come down from Broome, but he took on a particularly dedicated role within his school to deliver respectful relationships. Out you come. Come on. They don't like to be put forward. Centre stage. We have Meredith from Bruce Rock, who I think I'll just say she wore the sperm costume, if anyone. I don't really feel like I need to say more. So incredibly innovative and engaging, and if you've not checked that video out, I really encourage you to do so. Yeah, really very much a memorable classroom in Meredith's classes, I'm sure. And then we also have Katrina, who we're very grateful has come all the way down from Roebourne, and she's done a fabulous job in engaging with her community to deliver the Mooditch program. And if you know anything about Roebourne, it's obviously very high numbers of Aboriginal students, so she's done a fabulous job, and only relatively new educator as well, so congratulations, Katrina. And then we also had Lara Watson from Geraldton Grammar School, who has previously been to our symposium and shared some of her findings. She was unable to come today, but she did demonstrate a fabulous variety of evidence-based resources in her classrooms. And she was also managed to source some funding from a few creative spaces as well. So very excited to announce that our winner for this category is Meredith Mackenzie Thornton. I am a little sad she didn't bring the costume, but that's okay. She did, she brought it. Oh.
I just can't wear it.
She can't wear it. Maybe later on you might find someone who has to wear that. So great. Thank you so much, ladies. Okay, moving on. Can I get our primary finalists to come down, please? Where's Blake? Oh, he is. Sorry, I've jumped. That's right. Oh, yes. Sorry, that's why. Okay, so we have Amanda from John Butler Primary School and Craig Stein from Maidavale Primary School. And then unfortunately, we were unable to get, there was actually a team of educators from South Thornley, and they formed a Respectful Relationships team. So across all of our finalists, we definitely saw that team approach was most effective in the primary school space. And very excited to announce that a winner in this category was Mr. Craig Stein from Maidavale. Okay, moving on to the secondary school. If you don't mind coming down, please. So first of all, we've got Angela from Newton Moore Ed Support Centre, and it's actually really nice to see the education support so beautifully represented in this category. So Angela did a great job of embedding respectful relationships into her school's behaviour management plans and made really nice connections with social and emotional learning. Blake, again, has been a previous speaker in our symposiums, and he provides, in his video, you'll see it's a really lovely example of some innovative and interactive activities that he created for his students. Poovan has very graciously allowed me to shorten her name today, and I thank her very much for that. She definitely demonstrated in her video how much of an influential leader she is at her school. And Andrew from Swan Valley provided a wide variety of evidence-based resources that he had been implementing in his school. And I really encourage you to check his video out because I just loved the way he was able to distill his practice into some particular key messages. Very excited to announce our winner in this category was Poovan Siva. That's right. And just finally, we did put all those videos online and encourage people to vote for their favourite. And so we do have a final award, which is our People's Choice Award. So there's an additional trophy and monetary prize attached with that one. And again, my congratulations to Poovan Siva, who won the People's Choice.
So thank you again to the West Australian Health Department for making those awards happen. The exciting thing is that our finalists and our winners have agreed to come back after the morning tea session, and they will be sharing some small presentations to let you know about the work that they've been doing, and then they will be joined by some more of our finalists in a panel session. So there'll be the opportunity to ask these shining lights about their practice. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we go to the break. So out in the foyer area, we do have morning tea for everyone. If you've got any special dietary requirements, these are labelled, and if there's any issues, just please speak to one of our volunteers. We've also got heaps of local agency displays out there for you to browse, and all of those wonderful orgs are very happy to have a chat with you about how they can help you and your school to deliver really comprehensive and evidence-based RSE. Our next session is going to commence at 11 o'clock, and so for our online delegates, we just ask you to hold with us, and we'll be back in about 30 minutes. So thank you very much. And thank you also to Meredith for joining us this morning. We're now moving on to our stories from the field session, and we are going to be calling upon our winners who have very graciously agreed to come and give us some short presentations, around 10 or so minutes each, just to highlight some of the experiences that they've faced in their schools, and to give us some tips and tricks. So if you have any questions that sort of spring to mind as they're doing their presentations, again, please feel free to use that Slido code. After the 4 short presentations, we'll be inviting each of those speakers plus some more of our finalists to come forward in our panel session, so you'll be able to bombard them with all of your questions. Some people are having a great old time out there, I can hear them. Hannah can be the party pooper if you want. I don't like to prevent anyone having great fun. Yeah, the party's in here, I promise. So that's that Slido code again, if you'd like to use it. And I'm going to hand over the microphone, first of all, to Anita Wenben from Bramfield Park Primary School, the winner of our Rising Star. So thank you, Anita.
Just the big green button.
I've got the big green button, thank you. Excellent. So Kaya and Wanju, my name's Anita Wenben and I'm a Year 1 teacher at Bramfield Park Primary School in Maddington. And over the last couple of years, I've been involved in respectful relationships and developing and implementing a whole school approach at our school. The 3 C words that we've got today for this particular symposium, connections, community and collaboration, has, for me, already been amazing with Katrina's presentation this morning. It was engaging and inspiring, and I've got a lot from that as well to go back to my primary school and share. My principal, who's also here today in full support as well, which, as we know, any whole school approach starts with leadership, and if you have that support, it actually filters down so that we can do that bottoms-up approach as well. We also made a fantastic connection with a lovely lady called Sue out there in Morning Tea who approached us, who worked at Brantford Park in the earlier days, in the mid-90s, and she was doing sexuality education for us then. So that just, yeah, as my principal said, I think we're on kindred spirits at the moment, and it was an honour to meet her, and that we are actually continuing this journey throughout Brantford Park Primary School and Maddington families. A big green button doesn't want to work either. Got it. So, thank you. So today's presentation is about our journey and our growth at our school over the last few years. So in relation to the topic of relationship sexuality education at our school, I'm just going to share with you a few things about the background of our school. As a Year 1 teacher, some of the activities that I've done, but are not limited to, throughout our school. The whole school approach that we took to embed respectful relationships and sexuality education. Some of the challenges that we face and face ongoingly, and just some tips that I've shared not only here today that I'll share, but I've also shared them in a network of schools in my area. So the lovely Maddington, we are situated in Perth. We have around 344 students currently from K to 6. Our Indigenous population is 9%, and probably the most important thing is that we have 58% of our students or our families that have a language other than English. With that comes not just one particular cultural language, we have a plethora of cultures and language at our school. So that in itself becomes a bit of a challenge, not just for relationships and sexual education, but communication in general. So to share with you some of the work that I've been doing in the space of Year 1 with RSE, I've done Year 1 at our school for the last few years, and probably one of the things that I found to be most beneficial and engaging, but enabling that sense of belonging and safety and trust with our Year 1s is having a morning circle meeting, is what we call it. It's not just about going through our day, what I expect. It is about discussing problems, relationships, friendships, consent, and we do this on a daily basis. So it builds all those meaningful relationships with the Year 1s, whether it's between student to student or teacher to student. We have a lot of staff walk by, and they can see that the students are set up for the day, and that they feel comfortable to express how they feel and their concerns straight from the morning. It also allows them to settle. Our students come from a wide range of backgrounds, and so there's a lot going on in their lives before they enter the classroom, and this really does allow them to sometimes code switch to school and feel that they can actually express how they feel. So as it says up there, it sets that tone for a positive classroom, positive climate, so that we can get some of those discussions happening, but also the learning can happen as well. So this particular activity, and I think I'm speaking obviously to teachers here, and you've probably seen this activity. Whilst it's an easy activity to do, it brings out a lot of confidence and self-esteem for our students. It's a really easy one where they get to throw a ball of wool across to each other. We initially start with a compliment for that day about someone, and not just, oh, I like your red shoes, as Year 1s tend to do. I've got them to actually really think about that person that they have thrown it to, and try and think about something that's either happened that day, the day before, that they can hone in, because the word because is very important for our young students. They often mimic a lot, but if they have a better understanding as to why they've given that compliment to someone, then I also get a better understanding of where those friendships lie and what problems can arise from that as well. So it's a really easy activity. And then, as you can see, we create this amazing web, which the children are really excited about, because it does mean that we are all in it together. We're in it together, we can talk about things together and sort out our problems. So respect is one of our three main components of our school philosophy. There's responsibility, be responsible, be respectful, and be safe. And we take all those things very seriously at Bramfield Park Primary School. So we really look at respect with our year ones, and they've got some amazing things to offer. Each term in my classroom, we go through that and we set goals from that. It was also, I think, alluded in Katrina's presentation this morning, that really teasing out what that looks like, what it feels like and sounds like for our young people. Probably the most important part of that is setting goals, because then we can check in with each other. We can check in with each other at different times. We can refer back to our goals. Are we achieving them? If not, why not? And it's almost like, I suppose, a bit of an agreement with us as a class so that we're progressing. Things happen with our year ones all the time, and they're very egotistical little creatures. So they want to talk about those things now. So let's set our goals and let's see if we can embed them into our day and into our term. All about consent. The Department of Education, through our curriculum, has introduced consent quite prominently, right through from kindy all the way through to year 6 and beyond. It's to be implemented in 2024, but at Bramfield Park, everybody was aware that this year is the familiarisation stage of those components of the curriculum, and so we facilitated workshops for our staff to really get ahead of the game. So we highlighted everything that SCASA had changed, and we put it out there to all staff in a whole staff PD. And we went through exactly what that means for each classroom and each year group. So it was important to staff to be involved and included so that they know and are ready with resources to go as of 2024 for implementation. So we've talked a lot about consent with our juniors, ultimately meaning permission for them. Again, what does it mean? What does it look like, sound like? Probably really importantly, when do we need to ask for consent? And lots of scenario-based and role modelling with our year ones, because that's where they're at. Finally, also, what can I do if I don't give consent? That's really important, even for our year ones. I'm moving into year 3 next year, so I'm really looking forward to expanding this with our year 3s, who actually have had in year 1 as well, and really delving into their mindset about consent and what they can do if they don't give it. So I find that's really important. So I'm part of the process of upskilling all the teachers as well. I went to the last workshop that Curtin Uni held with the great team in RSE. And one of the activities I did with the year 5-6 teachers was getting some of that vocab out to them and feeling comfortable about that. They know that they do puberty and they can read all those words and they know it really well, but it's really engaging them in those conversations with our young people and allowing those young people to get that out and feel confident to get that out. So Jacqui, we did actually the icebreaker, I'm not sure if it was you or another person on your team, where we listed from A to Z and they had to work in pairs in a timer, and they had to put a word that went from A to Z in relation to sexual wellbeing. Let's put that out there. They were at first going, okay, Anita, all right, whatever you think. I'm like, you guys have got this. I have full faith in you. But sometimes you need to have an understanding of what our young people are thinking. And I got them to try and have that brain on as well. Have that brain on about what you think your year 5s might be thinking. You know them best. You've heard them in the playground. And then at the end of it, when the team had finished, they got right into it. It was quite interesting. And at the end, they had to say the word clitoris, which for them was just like, but you know what? Winner, winner, chicken dinner. They said it. But they've got to be comfortable with that and I think as the next presentation highlighted, young people need to know that we're comfortable with that when we're presenting that to them as well, and having more of a facilitation process as opposed to a pure educative process. And that can be really hard for teachers. So my role is also to upskill them and allow them to have a little bit more confidence, knowing that I guess I'm there for backup and happy to say the word. So when we were developing a whole school approach, these were the areas that we really honed in on to make sure that we were, doing a really good job of that. So as we know, as educators, we're always looking at best practice, we're always looking at evidence-based. We continually looking at our policies and making sure that they're appropriate and up to date, and that's an ongoing process. Our leadership is extremely supportive and active. My principal's here today, and she's been amazing support for all of our school when we've been implementing this process. Quality teaching, again, is very much an important part of educators, and having those strong reciprocal relationships between our school, our families and our community. So they were the areas that we really wanted to focus on moving forward. So way back in 2020, we were involved in Starrick's Respectful Relationships Teaching Support Program, and 3 staff members started the journey with an e-learning course where we gained further knowledge as a baseline of the issue of men's violence against women, and looking at some of those best practice standards for implementing respectful relationships education in our school. So that was a really good baseline. Then we attended 2 workshops, and for those of you that have been involved in this process, it's a valuable process from a community organisation that helps us understand it. So we got to deepen our understanding against the issue around men's violence against women, and exploring that culture of respect so that we could embed that in our whole school approach. And the way that was going to be embedded was through a primary prevention model, which really dictates how that feeds through our school. We were given lots of practical ideas, and we reflected on our planning and implementation activities in our school. So I took on the role as the facilitator for that program, and then we looked at our business plan, which is a very important document for the direction of our school, and we decided that we would like to implement that in our 2021 to 23 business plan. So to do that, we wanted to first and foremost raise the awareness of those issues with our staff across 2 years. So we just built on that over 2 years. It wasn't one-off situations. In our business plan, we have 5 pillars, and one of those pillars was wellbeing. So we thought that was a really important way to get respectful relationships in, and we devised that over a 3-year plan, and we had ongoing wellbeing pillar meetings. I've already talked about updates and upskilling. Probably the most important thing to do is updating staff on a regular basis, not necessarily wanting things from them or updating things from them, retrieving things from them, but just that communication flow. We have a very active school board as well, and it was really important to us when we share our business plan to allow for their comment and collaboration as well. So our business plan reflected the whole of school strengthening cultures of respect and respectful relationships across those 3 years, and to provide that framework. The wellbeing pillar, which we started in 2001, highlighted, as you can see in red, the Respectful Relationships Program. So that's a document that already says to our school, this is whole school. This is the approach we're taking, so we all need to be on board with this. We have a professional learning team that met quite regularly throughout the 3 years, where we wanted to devise a 3-year plan by identifying key areas that we would like to include. Important thing was to acknowledge what we had done prior to 2021, because teachers do some really good work in this space. They like to know what they're currently doing instead of just throwing things at them. They want to know what they're currently doing so that they can build on that. And then where to from here over the next 3 years. So the key areas that we identified were staff engagement and development. So we'd started doing that. Student engagement and having some peer-led options in there. We wanted to look at parent and community engagement, our lesson development and integration, and again, having our whole school engagement. Very hard to see, I'm sorry about that, but this is basically a 3-year plan, a 1-page document where it was very consultative between staff and our community organisations. So our community partners were key to this. I have already alluded to our school board, but we have a very good relationship with our Child and Parent Centre, who run amazing workshops and are very involved with our families and domestic violence issues. Starrick, they are out there as well at the moment. They have been ongoing for us, and that was shown throughout the video if you've had a chance to see it, not just through our Respectful Relationships program, but anything that we want to implement. And of course, Curtin Uni through the RSE project as well. So as you can see, the highlights in yellow are the ones that the staff we're already doing. We're doing so much work already. So it's really good for them to see this is what we're doing, but what is it that we can do more or better? And things, as any plan, flexible documents, we try to achieve what we can achieve, but sometimes that doesn't happen for whatever reason. What I am disappointed about is I can't spell bullying, and there's one L, and I'm very upset about that because I pride myself on spelling, so I'm quite embarrassed about that. I'm so sorry. Again, our staff are very consultative as well. So they also say if they don't want Life Ed next year, we don't do it next year. We have a high percentage, we talk about it, and we get their vote on things. And I think that's, we take pride in that from our leadership as well, which is really important. So as we're growing taller, obviously in any school environment there are lots of challenges, and as I've alluded to already, we have 58% of our students that come from non-English speaking background families. So it is a very multicultural school, which is probably an awesome and amazing opportunity to work in as well. So what comes with that is our language barriers. So we can't just design or implement or plan resources that are just for one particular language. So that's probably one of our most difficult barriers that we have to address. And because of those barriers, even if we do have those conversations with our families and students, there's often a lack of independence that comes with that, and access to transport for them as well. And so we have to work through, there's a lot that we need to peel back so that they can actually access what we would like them to see and do. We've been talking a lot out there as well to the different organisations about the different cultures and their expectations of living in Australia. That came up quite clear in our teachers when I did some workshops with them. They often get, but this is not what we do in our country. This is what we want to do, you're not going to do that. So their expectations are different. So we've had a really good chat to some people out there about how do we get past that? How do we try to embed in their mindset that Australia is a great country as well. We love to live, we respect your culture, but these are our laws as well when it comes to sex, basically, our rules of legality. So that's something that we are continuing to work on. Probably the most important aspect is having someone in your school engaging in those community partnerships. I quite enjoy communicating with other organisations. My previous job prior to teaching has been working with Department of Health in health promotion in Sydney, in a suburb called Bankstown, so a hugely multicultural suburb, which comes with lots of different issues as well. So I'm very comfortable and very aware of some of those community organisations that I need to engage in to make that happen for our school. Bramfield Park take great pride in building our relationships with our families. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, and sometimes it just takes listening. That's probably the most important thing that we impress upon our staff, and they do it very well, is just listening. They have a lot going on in our families, in our community, and they just want to get it out sometimes. And then we can start to work around some of those discussions. Staff were really positive from when the minute I had them engaged in the work that they're currently doing. You know, they were like, yep, excellent. We actually are doing something. The department's not just throwing us into the deep end. We are doing some great things. Let's build on that. They also acknowledge it's a journey. It's not just this 3-year plan and that's the end of it. So we're moving forward with that. Implementing the new curriculum in 2024, that will be mandated, and developing a whole school approach with a plan. That 3-year plan is something that we are now adopting across all other facets of our business plan, that style, because it does actually draw in all those components for lots of different areas. So if anyone has any questions, more than happy, but I'd like to thank you very much for that opportunity to share our picture of Bramfield Park Primary School.
I've just said to Anita, we might hold over all questions to the end if that's okay. So please put them through on the Slido if you've got a particular question that you want to pitch. No, you're fine. It's all very important and you're allowed to have the extra time, Anita. I just love seeing how sexuality education can be done in a primary school context, because a lot of the pushback you get is that this is not something that is done in primary school. So I think Anita has quite beautifully illustrated how it can and should be embedded from those earliest years onwards. So thank you very much. We now move over to Meredith, who is going to give us a presentation on what she has been doing in her school and some really great insight into how she's been able to navigate the challenges of working in a regional centre. Thank you, Meredith.
This is my wife, Kim. The things you do for your loved ones, I tell you. As if anybody watched the video, it did look a bit like a nun outfit for a while there, which, was kind of not really appropriate either, but it is what it is. Hopefully I'll make some sense today. I'm on some fairly heavy-duty drugs at the moment. So if I don't make any sense, just stop me and make me start again. Long story behind this one. It did have a partner. It did have a condom suit as well. But like all good condoms, they wear out, and so I had to throw it. It was kind of flaking it, so it had to go. Came across this very bizarrely, went to a costume shop, and they were sort of, having a bit of a clearance sale. And I'm looking at and I'm going, it can't be. Like, is that really what I think it is? And it turns out it had actually been especially made for somebody to go to a party. I'm not sure what the theme was. But that's how I came across it. And I think it cost me like $40 for the condom and the sperm. So the sperms managed to last a little bit longer. The condom was made of some other, I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good. And the kids smashed it. They, every time they had an opportunity for free time or whatever, they were straight into the back room and on with the condom suit. And so, I'm pretty sure I've got photos of my son in it and his mates and, the things you do in country schools. Okay, so obviously my name is Meredith Mackenzie. Thanks, honey. You can. Big green button. I'm just pushing the little green button. I come at this from a little bit of a different perspective. I did start my career as a phys ed and health teacher. I was at Linwood Senior High School for a little while, and then moved to Bruce Rock, where I went from being phys ed and health to English phys ed and health. This is my family. seems a little bit weird. Kim, and she's my wife, but we have 5 kids between us and a dog. So that's all the ferals up there. You can see that the boy is definitely outnumbered, seriously. Even the dog's a girl. I have really enjoyed the freedom that teaching regionally gives me, but I am very grateful for the groundwork that teaching at a big city school gave me to start with. I suspect that if I had gone straight to a district high school, things would have been a little bit different. And when I was at Linwood, I was the teacher in charge of health for a while there. But I think if I had gone straight to Bruce Rock, the isolation that new young teachers can feel, because you are the department, I am the English department, I'm the phys ed department, I'm the health department, and I'm the HAS department, which is what I'm also teaching at the moment. So, you know, if that's your first posting, that's a huge impact, particularly when, you know, not necessarily the schools very close to you are of particular help, because they are probably in the same situation. Oh, big ring button. Look, in terms of a whole school approach, technically we have a year-by-year outline and a Schedule A, as I'm sure most people do. As to how accurately it's being followed at the moment over the last few years, I'm not 100% sure. We have gone through a fairly hefty transition over the last few years and have a few other things that we've been trying to sort out. Some of the things that we've done over the years are the keys to success, the Smiling Minds, Prevention Ed, all those sorts of things. I've also taught RSE to upper primary in the past and provided assistance to staff. Jane, the principal of, where is it? Thank you, Bramfield. I actually taught RSE for her when she was in Bruce Rock, so small world. But it is something we'd like to address going forward, obviously, because there's so much more out there now that we can hook into and access, and to make sure that we are doing all the right things. So in terms of innovative classroom activities, like most of us, I think if we looked back on our own relationship and sexuality education, it was awkward, stilted, and rather brief. If I remember correctly, we were in a room and we were like, just tell us the information and get us out of here, sort of thing. Nobody really wanted to talk about it. As a phys ed teacher, you have great relationships with kids. Most kids like phys ed. You know, we see quite the different side to them. And so, you know, I wanted to positively influence their health understanding. So I became the teacher in charge of health at Linwood and introduced health studies into year 11 and 12 before I left there to go to Bruce Rock. And you might be going, why the hell did you leave and go to Bruce Rock? Permanency. Don't get that these days, but that's what led me down that path. And my sister was getting married, so I needed to be somewhere close as well. It was Bruce Rock or Karratha. Bruce Rock's a bit closer. So at Bruce Rock, I wanted to continue to develop these strong relationships with students and parents, and to ensure that the health education followed suit. I am now teaching kids of kids I taught, which is a bit scary when you're teaching high school. So over the years, I've come across lots of different programs for teaching health concepts and RSE. Initially, I brought all the work that I did at Linwood and took that with me. Things like the Resourceful Adolescent Program, the YES Project, Libra Educators, Sustainable Period Project, Bite Back, Sedera. Sedera is really, it's not Sedera anymore, I can never remember what it's called anymore. But lots of the Keys for Life, for anybody who's taught Keys for Life, I use lots of those activities to transfer across into health. And any of you watched the video, you'd have seen me do the sexuality tic-tac-toe, which was a Keys for Life one. prevention education, SHQ. I did try to put this little guy into the little ball spot here, but he's a bit little. But he's a bit bigger. This is the original one when the Relate program first came out. He's a bit bigger than the new one that they've got there. I'm not sure what's going on there. They're downsizing. And of course, there's a myriad of textbooks out there. Disappointingly, we're still one of the few states that doesn't have a specific health curriculum book for health here in Western Australia. In fact, the only thing I can find that is Western Australian based of any description is for HAS. That's it. And the rest of it is, very sadly lacking, unfortunately. So you've got to go out there and find your own stuff. This is an example of some of the things that I've used in my classroom. I'm very fortunate. I'm also a St. John of God. No, sorry. What is it? St. John's. Got the St. John bit right. EMT. So the birthing mannequin you can see there and was on the video. Obviously, we hadn't used it for a while because that was hard work pushing that thing out. I needed a bit more lube, I think. Much to the kids' disgust that, I can bring in that stuff and have a bit of fun with them as well. I have about 20 odd, they're not purple. The kids have named my dark blue one Papa Smurf. So, and we do have the banana squirty as well, but they just don't let me fill it up with anything anymore. They're so boring. So lots of different things that you can use and access. And again, I know that a lot of places don't have, particularly regionally, don't have a lot of money. I have shared some of this stuff with the schools that are close to us for the purposes, obviously, of educating. So what do I actually use then? Truth be told, any combination of the previous programs that I've modified, merged, changed, developed from year to year. I teach all the high school, usually a 7-8 class and a 9-10 in combination. However, I have had an 8, 9 and 10 split, which included my son and my daughter, which they were thrilled about. So it is rare for me to teach the exact same content, programs, PowerPoints each year. So I have created my own PowerPoints. They're quite explicit. I have children who still can't eat rice bubbles to this day. And talk quite proudly about that, really. So definitely happy to share. My philosophy is education is power. And my main focus is obviously to educate and to have fun. We probably spend more time just chatting and laughing in health than we do anything else. But lots of fun activities, lots of hands-on stuff, condom play, contraception play, tampons, pads. I love blowing those things up, man. It's great. Lots of role plays, communications, consent. I think we've watched that cup of tea consent video like 100 times. We still love it, and they're still very much don't make them drink the tea. We have lots of individual group research activities, lots of questions, lots of quizzes, noughts and crosses, lots of IT creations, adverts, news items, animations, graffiti walks, human graphs, values continuums, consent, other amazing videos. And just when you think it can't get worse, I find some other things. So we're in Singapore recently with the kids. Went into a sex shop. Although I was a little bummed. Because this one didn't work. I'm not saying a word. I'd like to say that in terms of challenges, up until 5 years ago, that I wouldn't have had any. That would have been accurate. 5 years ago, I fell in love with my best friend. She fell in love with me, fortunately. We left our husbands and moved in together. See, some of you probably saying, go girl. But Bruce Rock is, like many small towns around Western Australia and probably Australia, still living in the 50s. Quite misogynistic and extremely homophobic. To give you an understanding of that, my principal was asked when I was leaving. I was targeted by some parents. Kids didn't give a shit. And within a very short period of time of that happening, we had at least 3 kids who broached their sexuality with their parents, which made it kind of all worthwhile. My kids didn't really give a shit. They did and they didn't, you know, like no kid wants their family to break up. My daughter, who was away at school at the time, said, "Mum, I'm not stupid, it's not my fault. I don't really care." My son took a little bit of, obviously, time to get around it. He spent a fair bit of time with his dad. And the other 3, they just had to lump it because they were too little to go anywhere else. But what it has done is it allowed the kids at Bruce Rock to have a safe place at the school. You know, there's still, 5 years later, we've still got the odd people who will still point at us at the club. And I'm desperately waiting for one of them to say something, because I have the ultimate comeback, because I can say, well, at least I didn't marry my cousin. True story. Probably the biggest problem we still have today is the use of language by students, specifically the use of gay, homo as slurs, those sorts of things, and only because they're hearing it from their parents, which, you know, is a shame, but we're here to educate, so that's what we have to do. I'm not sure what else I've got left. Oh, regionally. Look, besides the lack of acceptance of anyone different, challenges can include things like you are your department, your resources are limited or may be limited, your access to professional development may be limited, although these days with access to online is great. Religious objections to RSE, I don't know if any of you have come across those, but we do have some places. When I was teaching at Linwood, that we had a huge Brethren population there as well. So, yeah, there are lots of problems that you can encounter, and I think the biggest thing going forward is the communication with parents, with kids, with your staff, and those sorts of things. So if I can offer any advice, if you're out there regionally by yourself, reach out to everyone and anyone you can think of for help. Nearby schools are often a great help. Visit other schools, both like schools, different schools, see how other people are doing it. Do as much PD as you can, particularly on the topics that you're most uncomfortable teaching. Get really good resources. 1 between 2 is a good start. Make use of freebies. I picked up a whole bundle of condoms again today. There's some new ones in there. My personal favourites, the Star Wars. Yeah, that's that one, and Tinder Surprise. I quite like that one. Make your classroom a safe zone. What you let go, what you hear, is what you accept. So don't accept it. If it's not on, then don't accept it. Talk with the parents who object. Find out where their problem is. Okay, so you know, it might be something really easy to solve. Might not be, but it could be a really easy problem to solve. So in terms of challenges. All right, involvement in the RSE space. If you want to become involved in the RSE space, again, talk to everyone about everything. Enjoy the ride. Have some fun. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to try something new. Make sure you've got somebody that will advocate for you. That's that really important thing, especially if you're in a school setting. Get involved in PD. Like I said, purchase good resources. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just learn from them. there's so many websites, SHQ, -18, Shine, South Australia, Body Talk, RSE Project, GDHR, like there are more things, and they have amazing programs. Like technically we can't watch these at school, but I always recommend for my kids to watch them because it's one of the few places you can see diversity and some of the few places where some of those kids can recognise themselves. And by Christ, did they have some fun with that show. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's great. I love it. Just watched the last season as well, which is really sad because that is the last season. And, yep, that's just the rest of the fam bam. Again, we did take our 16-year-old daughter's boyfriend with us to Singapore, so my son wasn't necessarily quite as outnumbered. But thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much, Meredith, and a special thanks to her as well. She's actually technically on long service leave at the moment and has not only driven from Bruce Rock to be here today, but done that while she was on leave, so thank you. We greatly appreciate that. This next gentleman won't be new to many of you. He has been a previous presenter, but as one of our finalists, we really wanted him to come back and reflect on his journey in the RSE space, so I'll hand it over to Craig. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and happy World Teachers' Day to all the teachers in the room. Hope you're having a fantastic day today. Yeah, I have been very fortunate to present at a couple of symposiums now, and so glad that I can come and share the work on behalf of my school that we've been doing at Maida Vale, but just as glad to hear the other fantastic stories and acknowledge the other finalists as well. Some great work being done out there, and it's kind of reassuring to know after, I think, this is maybe the fourth symposium I've been at now. There's more and more of these stories people are being prepared to share, which is fantastic. There's some wonderful work being done out there. So my story today is all about, well, that hopefully is familiar to most of you, talk soon, talk often. And we've used that as a mantra at our school, and it's very much about playing the long game, which anytime I go home and tell my wife we're playing the long game at school, she just chuckles at me and I always wonder why. And she says, well, why can't you do that at home? But I like the normal typical Aussie bloke, I just stare back at her confused, not sure what she's talking about. But we're very much about playing the long game with RSE at Maida Vale Primary School. And we've been in this space now, I think, for about 7 years. So our first entry into it, and I'll talk about this in a second, was about RSE parent workshop that we offer for our Year 6 parents and students that Jacqui's very kindly supported over the years. And that sort of was our entry 7 years ago. But the talk soon, talk often mentality, it's been adding on to that and continually coming back and having those conversations and doing it across the school. So yeah, I'm proud to share the story and I look forward to sharing it with you. So if anyone's not familiar with them, I'm sure you are. I did see some out in the foyer before as well. A fantastic resource. Credit to the Department of Health and all the contributors on that. I've been around long enough now that I think it's its second version. I don't know if there was a version before the blue one, but we've still got some of those around, but it's been updated and the yellow version. We use that. We actually give our Year 6 parents that come to that workshop every year a copy of that fantastic resource. So not only do we speak to them about some of the content within it, but they get to take that home and continue the conversation at home, which is what we're really big on, particularly with that transition into high school. So a bit about my school. We're on the way up to Kalamunda. We've been around a while, over 100 years, and sort of holding steady. Why I put that up is every school has its own individual context, but the talk soon, talk often message shouldn't be unique to any school. That's something that, and things hopefully that we're doing at our school, and certainly what I've heard from the schools that have presented already, are consistent, can easily be implemented in any school regardless of context. But what it is on a strengths needs basis. So, we've done things particularly for our community, but the talk soon, talk often mentality is one we always come back to. I want to acknowledge the RSE project, so Jacqui, Hannah and Rasheen in particular, for their support of us over 3 years. We did partner and get additional support as part of a bit of a pilot project, and it was a fantastic support for us. And where we are today wouldn't have been possible without the contribution from those amazing ladies and all the people that support that project. So thank you very much for that. So our whole school approach to RSE, so like most schools, it's embedded in school policy, procedural documents, and a scope and sequence, which was probably our first foray after the workshop, getting something embedded that our teachers could sort of hang their hat on and teach. Interesting aside on that, so I'm big on sharing and getting information out there, and happy to share all our documents. And there's a great group, or there's a couple of great groups that I know lots of people in the room will be on. There's a HPE community on Facebook, which lots of people are active on that. And there's an RSE project Facebook group as well, which lots of information gets shared across both those groups. So I've shared the scope and sequence on maybe one, if not both of those groups. But interestingly enough, about a year ago, and I don't want to embarrass, I can't remember the name of the person, I'm not sure if they're in the room, but they actually got on and someone asked about a scope and sequence for health, and they said, oh, there's this fantastic scope and sequence I picked up, and put ours up there. So that was interesting to see it almost come full circle and someone think that our resource was worth sharing. So we took a real positive out of that. Explicit theme, so we have a key theme each term that we focus on, and that goes from K to 6 across the school. Obviously what we teach is age appropriate based on each year level, but we work on relationships in term 1. So as Anita School, Bramfield Park, we're a part of the Respect for Relationship Teacher Support Program, so there's a big focus on that in term 1. We're also a You Are Strong school, which I know You Are Strong has a workshop this afternoon, so I'd encourage those that are going. Really, we sat through a You Are Strong workshop about 4 years ago and implemented it soon after that. Protected behaviours across the school, which is mandated in Department of Education schools in term 2. Growth and development, so that's mainly puberty in year 5s and 6s, but looking at, again, age-appropriate growth and development in younger years, and then healthy lifestyles, so anything that doesn't sort of fall within those categories. We've recently also explored becoming a PBS school, so we are a PBS school, positive behaviour support. Curriculum time is limited, so where do you put that? Oh, of course you put it in the health curriculum. So that's where we've tried to shoehorn PBS into health. 40 hours of the year that we're lucky enough. I know some schools don't have an hour necessarily that they can do health. We have a notional allocation of 60 minutes a week. It's always the first one to go each week. So yeah, we're still trying to put all these things in 60 minutes per week. It's amazing that we can achieve what we do with such a short amount of time in the curriculum. So there's a bit of an insight into what the You Are Strong program looks like. So it's very much a whole school program. We're actually still working on probably embedding that a bit better across the school. The images you can see down the bottom are our pre-primary students. So a lot of it's role play initially. And I don't want to steal any thunder from the You Are Strong crew who are presenting later. That gives you a bit of a snapshot. The interesting thing about that is, I guess the introduction of that was based around our staff noticing that our students were lacking social skills, lacking friendship skills, lacking the ability to even just know how to make a friend, which is interesting that they say that because, we don't expect kids to come to school and know how to spell and know how to do maths, but seemingly there's an expectation they know how to come and make a friend and develop social skills, and we're not working on that enough. So we're working on that, and we've got a key team that drives that within the school as well. So here's some examples of some of the puberty and respect for relationships lessons that we do, utilising the content from GDHR, which is a fantastic resource. So there's, anatomy, drawing diagrams. We use a question box, which is another recommended activity, and some of the questions that come out of that from our Year 6s. So our Year 6 teachers teach the content. Bit of a plug for Curtin's RSE teacher workshops that are presented annually. We've had, I think, about 8 staff who have gone through that now over the last 4 or 5 years. The selling point for that has always been, because I was one of the first staff to go, if you go to this workshop, you get to learn how to put a condom on with your mouth, which surprisingly no one's knocked that back when we said that as a selling point. So we've had 8 staff go along, and each of them come back and share some amazing stories from that workshop. So our staff feel empowered to deliver the content, which is really important because they have that existing relationship with the students, and the students feel comfortable in sharing with their teachers, which is great. So this is our PBS journey. So there are our 4 school values. You notice respect is highlighted there, and we use the white ribbon as a respect for relationships teacher support school. So Ruby Respect has a white ribbon in the background, and we acknowledge White Ribbon Day and as one of our campaigns at school that we look at on top of some others. So bit of student agency there. So students created the Made of Aliens. They've been digitised by a very passionate arts department at school, and then, so they're up and around the school, and a great talking point for our students. So again, not being limited to 60 minutes of health each week, trying to find other ways to talk about these really important concepts. So those initiatives and campaigns that I spoke about promote diversity, inclusivity and social justice within our school and the wider community. So again, finding opportunities outside the health curriculum time to talk about these important things. So these are just some of them. So Wear It Purple Day is something that we've acknowledged. That one probably gets the most pushback from parents, not that it gets a significant amount, but again, what's appropriate in a primary school space. So we talk about respect for all, including all, a sense of belonging, and Wear It Purple sort of our way to talk about that with our school community. Anyone that was able to watch the video, my daughter features in the video, and she identifies as queer, and she's now moved on to high school. She did come to Maida Vale, and her comments on the video are actually very reflective for me because, and there's a bit of pushback. We weren't talking to each other for a couple of weeks because she told me how much of a negative experience she had of health at Maida Vale. As a proud, passionate health and PE teacher, I took that to heart, but it wasn't until we unpacked that a little bit, she didn't feel like, with her particular identity and needs, that she really truly belonged to that school. So really reflective for me. And so we've introduced Wear It Purple Day since she's moved on to high school. So disappointing she couldn't join in that, but yeah, we're taking some measures to try and make everyone feel welcome in our community. As a man in the school and males in education, not only a small number of us, but seemingly a dying breed as well, take the role as a male role model very seriously. So the photo in the middle there at the top is our men on staff acknowledging November and talking about mental health with our students. So White Ribbon Day, 16 days in WA, and getting our Indigenous students involved in an artwork project that represents our Indigenous culture at the school. So again, talking more broadly on relationships, how we can give everyone a sense of belonging at the school. Okay, we have regular check-ins with staff and the school community to spread the message. So we do that in a number of different ways. Okay, and there's some examples. So we've leaned on some guest presenters this year. So Zero to Hero, Paul Litherland, which I know he is out and about and presenting a lot, but sharing that information that's out there, getting things that are out from the different the vendors today. It's always good to see new things that are out there so we can stock up our supplies that we provide to parents at school as well. Sharing the message is important because there's no point keeping all these wonderful things to yourself. Like today, it's great to be able to share. So that's about our Year 6 Parent Workshop. We present on that a couple of times at these symposiums. It's still something we continue to run, which I think is important. That talk soon, talk often mentality comes back. Nicola Burnley, who sadly gives her apologies for being here today, she was nominated as a Rising Star. She now presents that workshop for us. So it's great to have that expertise on staff, and we do lean on our staff who do have expertise and a passion in this area. It's very much a team effort with this. So there's a number of different activities that are done at that workshop. So Anita, you mentioned the alphabet activity that you did. You did it with your staff. Yep. So we did it this year with our Year 6 students and their parents sitting right next to them. So love just standing back and watching that unfold. That was an interesting 5 minutes to say the least. So, but a very enjoyable 5 minutes as an educator. So yeah, you can see the turnout, and I know Jacqui's been involved in a few of these, and the turnout this year, we had over 80 people there. So, and that doesn't happen at the start. I think at the start we were lucky to have 20 people, but word of mouth spreads. It's been a consistent feature on our school's calendar, and it's well supported and something that parents talk to each other about. So yeah, we're very proud of that workshop that we run. But it hasn't been without its challenges, and it's a difficult space that we're all in this space. schools, we didn't experience it at the start, but the last few years we've had significant staff turnover. So the three lovely ladies that I'm in that photo with, they're all former colleagues. They've all moved on. They were great advocates for everything we were doing in the RSE space. They all went through the RSE workshop at different times. They've all moved on to other schools now. So we lose that expertise, we lose that passion. So spinning a negative into a positive, we start again. We've got new staff that we talk to, educate, so that learning, that body of knowledge starts to get broader and broader. And we hope, and I know already from one of those ladies, she's taken what she has learned at Maida Vale to another school. So we start to spread that and get it further out, embedded into other schools as well. Staff buying can be difficult at the start. Every school has their currencies. I find bribery through chocolates is always a pretty good way. It's worked pretty successfully for us over the years, but yeah, that can be a tricky one. The vocal minority tend to speak up even louder about these issues. And then, the inevitable parent criticism and complaint, but just getting ahead of the game. So a few key takeaways, and I'll go through these very quickly. You notice the slide change, so Ruby Respect appears on this. These are our PBS lesson slides that we show. So again, just, a constant embedding throughout curriculum that we do about these. Key points, so embed that RSE in school planning. Don't come at it as something extra, so align with existing things that you're already doing out there. Identify those teachable moments outside of curriculum time. Don't commit to too much too soon. Take your time, do it well. So 7 years, this has been in the works, it's taken time, but yeah, just keep building on what you're already doing out at your schools. Find those early adopters, they can become the champions in your school. While we get criticism and complaints from parents, in the main, they're thankful for what we are doing, speaks to the nobility of teaching, and that's why I like to celebrate days like today. And hopefully it is celebrated. I know you're all here, but hopefully it's being celebrated back at your school because, we do a mountain of work, and I'm speaking on behalf of an enormous industry and an enormous amount of people here, but want to celebrate the amazing work the teachers do in this space. Look, there's always those preconceived values that are brought by students and staff to teaching this content. Jacqui provided us with a great quote that I know she shared widely many years ago. What we present is not values free, but it is values fair. So we need to be considerate that everyone brings different values to the table, but what we are teaching is reflective of the inclusive society that we all live in. And we provide the facts based on research. I suppose a takeaway point for me, and one that I always come back to, and hopefully you all get the opportunity to reflect as well, because we all get into teaching, all get into education for different reasons, but I believe it's important that we reflect on our why, identify our why to begin with. Why did we all start doing it? Sometimes that we move away from that a little bit. The busyness of teaching gets to us, but it's nice to come back to it because it can provide clarity and a sense of purpose. I like to align a bit of a statement with it as well, so that's one that I certainly try and live every day. The standard you walk past is the standard you accept, so not accepting the status quo, trying to bring about change, trying to do things that we know are hard but ultimately are going to make a difference, because future generation hopefully is going to see some benefit from it. So that's my young crazy son Elijah wearing an Einstein wig. So I'll share a separate story about him when I've presented previously, but the particular story about this one, so that was a crazy hair day at my school. Elijah went to my school for a little while. He's year 4 now. I think he was year 1 in that photo, so it wasn't that long ago. Crazy hair day. I was wearing my daughter, who appeared in the video that I spoke about before. That was her Wednesday Addams wig. So, pretty innocuous, just funny wig day, wear it to school. But the amount of questions that I got from students, or the comments from students, so, hi Mrs. Steen, how are you? And the gender stereotypes that sort of permeated through those comments and those conversations with students was really interesting, I thought. I didn't expect it, but created some teachable moments and some conversations that we could have with the students. And how that aligns with my why is that I'm very keen, like I've said a few times during this presentation, about sharing this information. So things that you're doing well out there, things that are working for you, your successes, please share them. It's, teaching's busy enough as it is without having to reinvent the wheel all the time. If people are doing good things out there and you've had success, please share and share alike. And I'm always keen to share, but I love hearing stories, what's working well out there in schools. And I just want to say a few thank yous at the end for the people in my school. I've had a great team over the years who have really supported me. Nicola, Therese and Lisa, they're sort of our health and PE committee, supported by school leadership. We've had a number of different principals over the last few years. So my substandard's health and PE. I'm now an associate principal, so I get to, I suppose, have a different conversation with school leadership now. So I'm in a good position that I can suggest to new admin when they come in, no, we're not changing this, we're doing this, we've worked bloody hard to get this to where it is. So, and they've been generally supportive. Thank you to Starrick Services and to the RSE project for all of your support over the years as well. If anyone has any questions, we will chat later, but you can, my email's up there and I'm always happy to share. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Craig, and straight on to Poovan, who was our secondary RSE educator, and I'm particularly interested in what she has to share working in an education support space. So thank you.
Thank you, Jacqui. No pressure, the last one. My name is Poovan, and I'm an education assistant and an RSE educator at Armidale at Support Centre. This presentation is going to be just a snapshot at how we run RSE at Armidale. We've only been running it for 4 to 5 years, so just a fraction of the time that some of you have been running it. So we've got a long way to go, plenty to learn. Before that, a little bit about me. I was born in Singapore and I moved here when I was 13 years old, so I did not get to visit those sex shops with the wind-up toys. I moved to Perth in 2003 and started year 9 halfway through the year, and it was a very scary year. But after that, high school quickly became an awesome time and I forged some lifelong friendships. But RSE education in Singapore wasn't really a thing. And I attended an all-girls Catholic convent high school from the time I started to the time I left Singapore. So when I came here and it was part of the curriculum, I was shocked. But it didn't feel uncomfortable. It didn't feel unsafe. It wasn't taboo. And so I think that's something I'm really passionate about, and I weave that into my classes to create a safe space and a positive environment without judgment or prejudice. So I started my RSE journey by doing the 3-day course at the Sexual Health Quarters in 2018. And from that point, we just started a couple of classes in the senior school from 2019. And then it gradually became a whole school thing, which I'll explain later on. RSE, I'll just, big green button. So the Armidale Ed Support context, so we are an education support centre, catering to students from year 7 to year 12 with disabilities. So this can range from physical to intellectual disabilities. And we're located in the Armidale area, which comes with its challenges, being located in a lower socioeconomic area. So over the years, we've observed a multitude of issues relating to healthy relationships and protective behaviors. And we can sum these up, I would say, into 4 primary focuses. So our students need a lot of help in these 4 areas. One of them is developing emotional literacy, strengthening their interpersonal skills, their social skills, being able to set boundaries, healthy boundaries, and building positive relationships. Many of our students are individuals with low emotional literacy, and they sometimes struggle to recognize and name their own emotions or those of others. They might say, I feel angry or I'm upset without specifying the underlying emotion. Limited emotional vocabulary means that the students might use the same words to describe different situations. The word angry can be used to describe frustration and disappointment and even sadness. Not being able to express their emotions in a healthy and constructive way results in outbursts, meltdowns, emotional suppression, and aggression. One of our current year 9 students struggled with exactly this when he started in year 7. When he didn't get his way or somebody, God forbid, said no, or he didn't understand what was going on, that's it. Slammed the things down. He would run out of the classroom screaming bloody murder. He just couldn't control his big emotions and he couldn't regulate them. And he would find a spot near the demountables and just bawl his eyes out. Everyone knew who he was. Oh, he's going off again because he's just upset. And so with students like him, social stories and visual aids were really, really helpful. And it doesn't happen overnight. It took a long time. And he benefited from those emotion cards or emojis with facial expressions to help him recognize and understand what he was going through as well as what others might express. And our students at Armidale all have IEPs, or individualized education plans. So the curriculum is catered to, is modified and scaffolded to their needs. And so students like him benefited from social stories and using simple language and relatable scenarios into his learning. Now he's come a long way and improved in his emotional regulation and overall literacy. His friends are happy to be around him, and he's actually a pleasant friend to all of his peers as well. Students with special needs, especially intellectual disability, autism, and ASD, find it challenging to interact in socially appropriate ways with their peers. Many of our students have poor interpersonal skills, which can manifest in ways such as difficulty with active listening, lack of empathy, lack of effective communication, and limited social awareness. Again, recognizing that each student is unique and responds differently allows us to use a variety of teaching strategies. And the most well-received one is role-playing. Role-play learning is an effective method at Armidale Ed Support Center. And we have another Year 9 student as an example. He has an intellectual disability and he has autism, and he's also a selective mute. So you might be thinking, oh, this is gonna go well, role-play. We'll see. Nerves, anxiety, unwillingness to participate, and low confidence are already some reasons why students would be reluctant to take part in role play. But I still try to encourage the students because it teaches them to put themselves into perspective of others and test out their skills and knowledge in a safe environment. And then it fosters empathy and simulates real life situations. And this student blew my mind. This otherwise quiet and slow-moving kid was up there in front of the classroom using his body and voicing out, the role of a bully or the role of a bystander or role of a bullying victim. And I could tell that he was using these skills out in recess and lunch as well. It was really great to see. And now I just can't seem to stop him. The classroom is a stage and every lesson is a dramatic play. But it's really, really rewarding to see that it pays off with some of the students. Our next focus is on the importance of setting healthy boundaries in relationships, and that comes with the challenges of having intellectual disabilities as well. It's being unable to tell what boundaries are, where do I set them, with whom do I set these boundaries. So this is something that I'm really interested in, and it's embedded throughout all the classes that we run from Year 7s to Year 12. And one of the boundaries, or one of the challenges is that a lot of our students benefit from touch to regulate their emotions and to calm themselves down. And they often seek this out in other staff members, adults, and some students even. So while I acknowledge the need for their touch, in order to regulate themselves, we also have to let them know that others might have this like the circle around them, and we have to respect the boundaries that others place on you. So we teach them public and private body parts, talk, touch, activities. These are all explicitly taught, again, through role-play learning, interactive games, Kahoot quizzes, because they're so competitive and they love to see who gets on the pedestal. And for the higher ability students, oral presentations, debates, and group discussions go really well. Through class discussions and all these brainstorm scenario work, the students also explore what consent looks, feels, and sounds like. And this helps them practice and identify enthusiastic yeses and assertive nos. And consistently using this assertive language and setting healthy boundaries improves their self-esteem and confidence as well, and helps them identify when someone is not treating them right or when someone has placed a boundary around them. The goal is that they're well on their way to forming healthy relationships. And the final focus is building positive relationships. So the goal is they focus on identifying emotions and setting healthy boundaries, working on their social skills so that they can eventually lead to creating healthy and positive relationships in their lives. We all know that young people, especially teenagers, are not going to make the right decision or the right choice the first time, the second time, or even the third time. It takes a long time to assemble their toolbox of strategies and skills to build positive relationships in their lives. Many of our students come from family units where there are often conflicts between parents and other family members, some even from trauma backgrounds where positive role models have been absent for most of their lives. These students have only ever engaged in relationships where there are more negative traits than positive ones. Working closely with the student services team at Armidale, I aim to create a safe space in the classroom and build a positive relationship with the students. I think it's important to display what healthy, positive relationships look like because our students tend to emulate that behavior, and what we do and what we show them really makes an impact in their lives. This is all possible, once again, through role-playing and storytelling, games, whole class discussions. Back in 2019, we had a group of year 11 and 12 students who are actually quite high functioning, and they took on the incredible task of recording a podcast about sexual consent within intimate relationships and making a film on school bullying. On school bullying. I encourage students to conduct their own research and put themselves in the shoes of those impacted by the toxic behaviors. They took over a term to complete this mammoth task and as part of the ASDAN program. And what came out of it was not only a greater understanding of meaningful relationships, but also a strengthening of friendships within themselves as a cohort. And it was wonderful to see that as an educator. So the whole school approach started off in 2019. So every RSE lesson that I conduct at Armidale is not done by me alone. It is with a whole troop of incredible, talented, resilient staff, without whom all these successes is not possible at all. And I work very closely with the classroom teacher, the education assistants, student services team, and the leadership team to create a whole RSE program that works for all the students from year 7 to 12, and it caters to all of their individual needs. So the important thing is to cater to the entire school cohort, but still keeping in mind that they have IEPs and individual needs that need to be modified and scaffolded. And it was important to us that we promote positive, respectful, and supportive connections among all students, educators, and staff, and we develop a whole school approach to explicitly teach respect and communication, conflict resolution, empathy, and consent and boundaries. This is just a small part of our current scope and sequence program. We're attempting a new format at the moment. And as you can see, we've got 4 core elements. We've got private, public, and consent. We've got relationships, identity, and then we've got sex and out in the society. And what we've done is teased out the whole curriculum into SMART achievable goals. And these form part of the IEP goals. And years 7 to 9, they make up our middle school, and years 10 to 12, our seniors. So these are all the different outcomes and objectives that we can select for the students based on their needs and the year level. We do have a agency display outside for Armidale Sports Centre, and we have our student services deputy principal as well. So please feel free to come and have a look at our samples of scope and sequence and have a chat to us about how we actually run this in more specific details. So from everything that I've learned so far, and I'm still learning in my role because it's only been 4 years and I have so much more to learn from everyone here, especially. These are some of the valuable tips that I think would benefit anyone wanting to get into this industry. Staying informed, keeping up with the latest research, trends, and developments in relationships and sex education. Knowledge is a powerful tool, and it's important to provide accurate and up-to-date information to your students. Creating a safe space, fostering a safe and non-judgmental environment where students feel comfortable discussing sensitive topics and asking questions, and we respect their confidentiality and privacy. Age-appropriate curriculum. We've got to tailor, modify, and scaffold our curriculum to the age and developmental stage of our students. What's suitable for one age group may not be appropriate for another age group. And in an ed support setting, that's very true because we will have students in year 7 who are higher functioning than students in year 10. So we do have to go through that extra step of scaffolding and modifying the content to their needs. Finally, the professional boundaries, always maintaining a healthy professional boundary with the students because they are observing our speech and our behaviors. So it's important that we're not misinterpreted and that we also practice protective interruption where it's necessary. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for your time and thank you to the RSE Project for having me here.
Thank you very much, Poovan. Can I ask Poovan, our other speakers, to come forward and to sit on our panel? We're also going to be joined by Andrew Storer, who's one of our secondary finalists, Katrina, who's one of our regional finalists, so she comes from Roebourne, and Sophie, who was our rising star. So those fabulous people wouldn't mind coming forward. I'm conscious of time, but I do want to we do have some questions that we do want to pitch to our panel. So I just want to give everyone a heads up. I promise I'm not keeping you away from your lunch, but I'm anticipating a slight creep of no more than 5 minutes. I'm going to sit on the end here. And can we just grab the extra mic? Please. So my first question, and this might be something, anyone can jump in, but I'm going to pitch it specifically to Anita and Katrina because of the cultural diversity that I know exists in your schools. Have you got any specific tips or tricks in how you've been able to affirm and connect with the cultural diversity that might exist in your school?
Hello. For starters, my school is 99% Aboriginal students. We're up in the Pilbara, so the best tip and trick would be to connect with your school AAOs and any Aboriginal services like in the community. Hands down, that's the first place to really get in there. If you can get in with the service providers who see the kids outside of school, and even things like PCYC, the youth centre, those kind of places to get those messages around. They can help you on the outside and they can help you on the inside. Yeah, that'd be the best tip.
It's probably one of our ongoing challenges, I think, that we're continuing to do. One of the things that we initiated but probably wasn't well attended was just some English classes. That was certainly something that perhaps we could introduce again, but yeah, we have a problem with that, and we're going to have to really think about some of the ways of engaging all of the language barriers that we've got. We try so hard to really just connect with those families. That's probably the best way, and hoping that they bring someone along that we can talk to as well that is English speaking within their family environment. It's tricky.
Anyone else on the panel got experience with engaging with different cultural groups and had some success stories? No? You're right, yeah. Okay. So we've got a question from the Slido. From a staffing perspective, do schools provide extra time for your RSE coordination? And if so, how much are you getting? People want to know.
Hi, so at Wesley College, we have a dedicated mentor period for 20 minutes every day. It runs at different times depending for junior school. We have a junior school, middle school and secondary from year 9 to 12. So that's every day. And then on Wednesdays for our middle school and senior school, once a week, they have an extended session that's primarily used for SEL, but also respectful relationship education. And that runs for an hour and 20 minutes. For staff developing and involved in that, they will also have some dedicated time. So for our junior school, we have a staff member, Hannah, who's our wellbeing kind of advocate in the junior school, and she gets every Friday off to work with other leaders in the school to help develop the wellbeing curriculum and space and deliver that. And a similar situation with our middle school. So we're really well supported in that space for time from leadership, but that's because they see the value in that. So,
anyone else want to share the time allocation they might get?
Not quite as much as that, unfortunately. Would be lovely. But yeah, as a curriculum leader, I suppose our curriculum leaders, maybe they get a day a semester if they're lucky. that can be planned at a time that suits them. But then, our leadership again does prioritise it. So it's when a relief teacher might be in and there's a little bit of extra dot going around, quite often that gets prioritised. But again, that can be difficult because it's a bit more ad hoc and you can't plan things around that. So yeah, there's certainly challenges around that.
At Armidale, so our curriculum leader, who's also the deputy principal, does allocate more time in order to develop the curriculum packages. So we have year 7 onwards, sort of 4 levels of curriculum packages that we're developing for our curriculum. And so she's given, like dot sessions for me and another of the RSE educator just to get our work done. And it's very valuable time indeed.
At our school, I cover a number of whole school projects. So I'm fortunate enough, and as well as with the health curriculum, to be designated time each week, an hour each week or 55 minutes each week, where I have that ability to cover the health curriculum, respectful relationships, and some other projects that I conduct on top of teaching.
I do know also the RSE grants that the Department of Health does offer to schools. That can be used for a whole myriad of things, but they're very open for that money being used to buy out teaching time as well. So keep that in mind if you need to be a little bit creative in trying to get some more planning time. I had another question around how you might engage parents and carers with the content that you're teaching in the classrooms and how to encourage some at-home conversations. So perhaps a primary school and a secondary school example would be great.
I guess, so my role at Wesley is from pre-K through to year 12. It's been challenging, and in certain circumstances, we are a co-ed school up until year 6 and then an all-boys school from year 7 through to year 12. We are also a uniting church school. And so, like all schools, our parents have different backgrounds, beliefs, and different education in it, so they're a product of their own education sometimes. So in terms of engaging parents, we also have an incredibly supportive parenting community as well. I'd say at times it is a vocal minority. So engaging parents, one of the key things we've done this year, one of our focuses is inclusivity, particularly in the LGBTQIA+ space. So our leadership actually communicated a statement out to all of our parents that was a very clear focus for us, and we're a supportive and inclusive school. That was a huge help for all of our staff then going on and delivering inclusive conversations in that space, because they knew that they had backing from leadership. So any leaders in the school would really recommend having a clear policy and communication, because it just adds so much more support for your staff and means that they can go back to that. So that was for both our that communication went to all parents, both primary and secondary, and then with the understanding that through our connection and partnership with SHQ, that content is then going to be delivered at age and stage appropriate platforms for students.
So I guess we already have a captive audience relatively to primary school, so parents are around, but we've leveraged off existing things that we do within the school already. So at the early years, we have information sessions at the start of each year for parents, so getting some RSE content in that, explaining to parents what we do and what they can expect their children to learn at different ages, but then, building in other opportunities. Regular communication is the key to preempting any sort of conversations that may come up with open and honest communication with parents about what we're covering has been important as well.
I think in an ed support setting, because we do have the IEPs, so at the start of every semester, we do have IEP meetings that the teacher conducts with the parents, and it lets the parent know, all right, this semester, this is what the students will be achieving or learning, and the RSE outcomes are part of that, so they are made aware through that method. And then, of course, regular communication throughout the term, throughout the school year, through school diaries, phone calls, just to keep that communication up. That's it.
I might turn now and ask one of the panellists who wasn't in that previous session sharing their innovative tips and tricks. But to either Andrew, Katrina or Sophie, have you got any particular innovative classroom activities or any go-to favourite resources that you wouldn't mind sharing with our delegates?
SHQ, I'm not getting paid by them, by the way. It takes a village. So knowing who your staff are that are advocates in the space and are passionate about it, so you can share support for one another in it, but also having an external support partnership with people who are up to date with the research, who have the skills to help navigate those conversations. It's been one of the most supportive things that we've had in the school is what they've provided. So maybe another provider, absolutely, but SHQ have just been such a valuable resource for us.
Cool. I'm not sure how innovative this strategy is, but it's something that I implemented this year, and a lot of my colleagues and staff implemented, and it had a pretty profound impact, I think. And that was utilising some of the resources from the New Zealand Rape Prevention Education resource, and they've got some really great and very confronting videos as well that go along with that. And it was having those really frank conversations with the kids and showing them the video, but then allowing for a significant amount of that lesson time to really go through that in detail and allow it just to be a really organic conversation between the students and ourselves to see what they truly thought of the resource and how that reflected into their cultural norms, because we've got quite a high African population at our school as well, and whether they thought that was the right thing, the wrong thing, and we really had a good opportunity to debunk that video in particular. And within that resource, there was some great stuff on domestic and sexual violence as well, which we were able to go into in detail. So I'm not sure how innovative that was, but the students certainly got a lot from this upfront and quite confronting information. It was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add, sorry, and not on the same boat, not necessarily innovative, but what I've really worked hard this year for is student voice. It's just such an important part, but they're so articulate, they know what they want, they know what they're frustrated with. And so taking the time to listen to a wide range of students, we worked with the RSE and SHQ in small workshops from our Year 5s all the way through to Year 12s, and I met with every single Year 9, Year 10 and Year 11 student this year and asked them specifically about what they wanted in terms of sexual education and respectful relationships, teacher voice. So taking the time to really get, that information, but then that works so well for... Maybe it's telling me I talk too much, which I do.
Go to the microphone.
Oh no, can you hear me at the back? Just loud, yeah. Taking the time to get that information, it not just helps with designing the curriculum, obviously, but then it's buy-in from students and they're seeing what they want presented. But it also helps with working with leadership to request time. It helps with parents, if there's ever kickback for what's happening and what's being presented, you can actually go back and say, this has come directly from the students, that's what they're wanting. So I think that's a really important, tool for the content that we're trying to deliver.
Did you have one you want to add, Katrina? Skip, cool. All right, I'm going to just move to this microphone just so that our online presenters can hear us. I'm sorry that was a little rushed, but I know our panellists will be hanging around over the lunch break if you want to pepper them with some follow-up questions. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping before we close out the morning session. I want to just thank you again for the commitment that you've given to this space, for stepping outside of your workplaces and your classrooms for the day.
we really value your commitment to this area. So if at the very least, please go on and share with your colleagues back at work on Monday about the event today and some of the key messages that you've learned. I also wish to thank our advisory committee who helped pull the program together. They're all listed on the back of our program, and I think you'll agree they've put together a really fabulous suite of presentations today. We've got a whole host of student volunteers who've been on hand helping us set up, and they'll be around to pack up. So thank you very much to all of our volleys. And just my personal thanks to the RSE project team. Particularly, I won't go in, there's a number of us and most of us work in multiple roles, but I just want to give a special shout out to Roisin. It's been a massive, busy little bee over the last couple of months pulling this event together, and she's done a fabulous job. So thank you to my team, but in particular to Roisin. All of the recordings and the slides will be made available, and thank you very much to our online delegates. I know we had a little bit of a tech issue in the middle, but thanks to the team at Brightside for providing our tech support, much better than the support you get at Curtin. And I don't mind that being recorded. So yeah, that's been great to have all of this live streamed. So again, we want this to be an ongoing resource, and we're going to be starting to spread these messages and these presentations far and wide. So thank you very much to our online delegates. Don't forget your evaluation forms. If you're online, there's an online survey, but for people in the room, you're not going to get that sweet treat at the end of the day unless you hand over an evaluation form for us. Just remember that the workshops start at 1:30 this afternoon. If you're not sure where you're going, they're on the notice board, or come speak to one of our volunteers. And we look forward to connecting with you all at the Sundowner. So yeah, onwards and upwards, and thank you very much.